Well, good morning, and a pleasant good Friday morning, everybody. We are back in business. We welcome you to Dialed In with Tom Brenneman and Luke Brenneman. And manning the controls today, we don't have Casey. Apparently, Jacob Tissett, you have become not only an outstanding talk show host, you are also dialed in on how to have everything working now. Very impressive.
I do what I can. I do what I can, Tom. The way to provide the most value is to be as versatile as possible. So I try to do
That's right.
whatever I can. Happy to be here with you guys this morning. It's been a long time since I've talked to you
Great to
on
have
air.
you.
It's always been fun. So
I
happy
know.
to be here.
Oh, yeah, so glad you're here. Lukey, how you doing today, my man? How's everything at Indiana University?
It's good. Perfect time of year when it comes to the weather. Big football weekend, though, for the Indiana Hoosiers. They're all the way out in
Yeah.
Pasadena. They'll play UCLA on national TV tomorrow night. But fired up that Jacob's here. I have a lot of redemption coming both of your guys' way once we get into these picks and I don't even want to talk about my week one start. But nonetheless,
Oh boy.
Dad, where are you at and how are you doing? Because
Let's
you're coming off
you know
your
what? Let's
birthday
get it.
yesterday.
Yes, thank you, Yes, great birthday. I spent most of it in a car driving from Cincinnati down to where I am right now in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Going to be calling on the CW network tomorrow night, prime time. We'll have the number 5 Ole Miss Rebels taking on the Wake Forest Demon Deacons. So that'll be fun tomorrow night. You were on your way up to Chicago, but before we get to that, I want to lay all the cards on the table real quick here. You were 0-7 last week. 0-7. You're a guy who used to make a lot of money, and I mean a lot of money, by picking games, successfully picking games, picking them for other people, I might add. And here you show up our first game on Dialed In of the college and pro season, and you rip off an 0-7.
Yeah, I mean, 0-7 is one of those things that's quite honestly hard to do. I think if I tried to go 0-7, I obviously would have gone 7-0. So it's week one. If you know me, I'm going to heat up. But I'm a football guy and a pro football guy. So week one in college football, I had a tough time, but it was a little bit of a fluke. I'm coming for the NFL hard this week and at least try and climb back up in the standings because you and Casey did pretty dang well in week one. I mean, you could have just taken the opposite of all my picks. But nonetheless, I'm certainly in dead last of the standings right now.
That may be a strategy for this week's picks for college and pro. Who I will let you pick first, and Jacob, whoever he picks, since you're picking for Casey today. And by the way, Casey and I 5-2 last week. 5-2, and so there's a lot of pressure on you, Jacob, to pick for Casey today.
Yeah, that's right. I texted Casey. I wanted to give him a chance. I said, if you want to pick the games and just have me read them, I know the records are important. I'll give you that opportunity. But he trusted me. He said he trusted me to pick all the games for him, just what I think. And I feel good about this weekend. I was happy with the games Luke picked for us to pick this weekend because I felt pretty confident about most of them.
Okay. All right. I do too, and we'll get to those in a minute. Look, a lot to talk about today on Dialed In, and thanks for being with us. We're still trying to get ironed out what our Fridays are going to look like. Monday, we know we come your way at 9 o'clock. Fridays, we still got to figure it out because of Luke's class schedule, his travel schedule on the Indiana football beat. You did not go to Pasadena for this weekend's game, but the rest of the home and road games, you will be with the team, correct?
Correct.
All right. Well, we got to get this figured out what we're going to do on Friday because we got a lot of people that want to see what we're doing and see what our picks are and how we're doing. And Blackmore says, I'm in my bedroom. No, I'm not. I'm in a hotel room, Blackmore. So we appreciate all you guys being here with us. The Bengals and the Chiefs. There's a lot going on right now with the Bengals. The whole Jamar Chase thing, we know that they have decided because of this deadline that basically the Brown family has put on contract negotiations that if the deal wasn't done before the season started, that negotiations would no longer continue. Now, look, there are such things as hard deadlines in this world. We know what they are, okay? We know what hard deadlines are. And, you know, if they say the kickoff and I got to be on the air at 6:30, tomorrow night, there's no 6:32 involved here. There's no 6:34. Hey, can you give me an extra few minutes? I'll be right there. There's no such thing there, right? But this is not one of those situations with this contract. I venture to say if you were to probably just put the Browns and Jamar Chase's agent in a room, because apparently they've already agreed on the money. That's the hard part. It's the timing of when Jamar would have received guarantee money. Bengals want to push it back a little bit. Jamar would rather have it more sooner rather than later. I just don't understand stuff like this. Look, I'm not going to tell the Browns how to run their business. They do it very, very well. But this one to me is one of those kind of like, okay, do you have a hard and firm rule about this? What time we're putting Ella and Luke to bed when they were little kids, right? I mean, no. Anyway, so you got that going on. Chase comes out and says, I do love it. I love it. Some people may not like it. I love it. He says, we're the team to beat in the AFC. Came right out in the media and said it. Cam Taylor-Britt, not too crazy about the comments he had about Worthy, the wide receiver, the rookie from Texas that plays for Kansas City. That he's a little guy, and if you just bump him at the line of scrimmage, you take away his speed. If anybody's watched this cat play, this guy's a good player. And I don't know if Cam Taylor-Britt's ready for that kind of talk. But you know what? I'd rather him put himself out there than be some boring, doesn't say anything kind of guy, because they're a dime a dozen, those guys. T. Higgins is upset, and I don't blame him. T. Higgins made the decision that he was going to play for the Bengals this year after he wanted the contract, didn't get it. They franchise tag him, right? It looks like he'll probably be gone after this year. That's not for sure, but it looks that way. He came out and he said, I'm going to show up and be ready to play. He showed up and was ready to play. He injures his hamstring a couple of days before the season opening game against New England. And now all the Bengals fans now are killing T. Higgins, thinking that he's doing this because he's unhappy with the contract. Anybody who's followed T. Higgins in his career and the kind of guy he is knows that that is absolutely ridiculous. And I don't blame him for being upset. He's hearing all this noise from a bunch of people, fans. Oh, the guy's, he's not playing because he's unhappy with he didn't have a contract. That's not T. Higgins. There might be some guys out there that are like that, but he's not like that. Luke, I actually feel kind of bad for him on this thing.
Yeah, it's kind of a nightmare, especially pairing that with just the Bengals' Week 1 performance. A lot of these issues would go away if the Bengals did what they were supposed to do and just curb stop the Patriots. But they were the ones who got dominated pretty much on every level of the field, and the Patriots didn't play very good either. So now you look at a game with the Chiefs that arguably could have been one of the more hyped-up regular season games, although it's just in Week 2 of the entire season. And I don't really know where Bengals fans lie. I'll ask you and Jacob how you feel about going into this game, but you open up as a 4-point underdog. You're like, hey, that's fair. We're at Arrowhead, and now after last week, it's all the way up to a touchdown underdog for the Bengals. Are they going to go out there and get stomped? Is this more of like a redemption game for Joe Burrow where the Bengals kind of do what they've done the last 3 years and look really bad either in one half or one game and go out and look like world beaters in the next one? So you really can't judge this team too much when it comes to like a volatile basis because that's just what they are. And Bengals fans don't want it to be that way, but sometimes that's how it works in this game. You got to get hot at the right time. You can sometimes play bad at right times. And if that is early in the season, then so be it. But for the most part, the Chiefs came out Thursday Night Football against a really good Ravens team and kicked butt. The Bengals came out against a really bad Patriots team and got their butts kicked. I don't really know what else to expect on Sunday, but I'll be here for it, and we certainly will have a lot to talk about on Monday. When it comes to Cam Taylor-Britt and these comments, the one thing I will say that's somewhat inspiring, in my opinion, is this idea that the Bengals locker room seems really confident. Even Jamar Chase came out yesterday and said, we hate them, they hate us. That's just how it is. It almost feels like there's a sense of aura and confidence in that locker room still, which I really like because this is a good football team. This is a Super Bowl favorite. So just because a Week 1 loss and Bengals fans are down, it doesn't seem like the locker room is too worried about it. It seems like they're ready to move on.
Well, I mean, I got to tell you, I mean, we weren't able to have the show on Monday, so we didn't get a chance to talk about the Bengals game. So let's just take a minute or two to talk about it, and then we're going to move on and talk more about this matchup with Kansas City. Look, I've probably been harder on Zach Taylor than anybody in the town over the last few years. There are a lot of things he does very, very well. I'm not saying that he shouldn't be the head coach of the Bengals. I don't want anybody to misunderstand me here. I'm not saying that. There are most of the things he does very, very well. But having his team ready to play week in and week out is not one of them. For that team to show up and play the way they played, that offensive line was brutal. The tackling was brutal. Now, I know there are a lot of rules in the NFL now about how much you can hit in practice, how frequently you can wear pads, but that holds true for everybody. Week 1, you're probably going to see a few more missed tackles than you will week 2, and then week 3, and week 4. You hope that's the case in the Bengals case, because Anarumo said that they blew more tackles, missed more tackles than any game since he's been the defensive coordinator. But they weren't ready to play, and I find that very, very troubling. You know, they've been better than the Steelers the last number of years. We know that. But you never have to worry about the Steelers showing up ready to play. They may not be as good as the other team, but they're starting a backup quarterback week 1. Now, he's been a starter with Chicago, but Justin Fields has to step in and play, and their defense says, okay, well, our offense might be hurting a little bit here today, so I'm sure Tomlin says to his defense, fellas, we got to get it done. And what do? They go out there and get it done. I just cannot understand how the Bengals year after year after year after year, and he's been here a number of years now, I just cannot for the life of me understand how there are so many games, and especially at the beginning of the season games, if they can be ready to rip off an 8-game winning streak in the middle of the season as they did 2 years ago, why can't they be ready to play the first game of the season or the second game of the season or the third game of the season? Because they're starting every year 0-2, 1-3. Luke, you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I really don't have an answer. And the thing is, I always stay away from getting into these arguments about the Bengals' early season struggles because if you look back at last year, they almost sneak into the playoffs with Jake Browning playing really good after a slow start. It was another slow start coming off the preseason where nobody played. Zach Taylor switches up this philosophy, has some guys play in the preseason. They look awful in the preseason, then they look even worse in week 1. So there's something with this team. I don't know if it's the way they're coached, if it's the personnel. It obviously can't be because these football rosters are so big that they really do change so much year to year. But there's something in this preparation that is going extremely wrong for early weeks for the Cincinnati Bengals. With that being said, I don't have a problem with it because this is a Super Bowl team 2 years ago, or was that 2 or 3 years ago now? Whatever.
3 years ago.
Last year, knocking on the door of the playoffs with Jake Browning. I really do think this team, they get hot at the right times, and I'm not going to complain with that because as a fan, I know, especially it was always like that Kansas City game when they'd play them the last couple of years later on in the season, whether it was in Arrowhead 2 years ago, it was in Cincinnati 2 years ago, and they beat them. That was always like the turning point game of the season. So it's going to be interesting now that we head into week 2 because it's always the Chiefs game later on. And I touched on this summer when I was in the studio where it's like it's going to be a different feel having Kansas City week 2 because for Bengals fans, that really is the game where it's like, we had our slow start, we got hot, and all of a sudden everyone knows we're here. And the best way to prove that you have arrived is if you beat the best of the best. And it has been the Bengals who have came out on top, at least in the regular season, more often than not, over Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. But that's been like say, week 14, week 16 game. So for it to come in week 2 after that slow start, this is going to say a lot about the Cincinnati Bengal team and just overall how ready to play they are for this entire season.
Jacob, you think they got a chance this weekend?
I think they have a chance because I don't know what happens to this team in this season if they don't. If they go out there and they play flat and they get blown out and the offense doesn't put any points on the board and say it's a 27-3 loss or something like that, I think the issues are a lot bigger than we have right now, even though we understand that there's some big problems with this team because obviously we just lost to a really bad team in the Patriots. But even if they don't pull out the win this week, there's a lot of things I need to see from the Bengals offense, defense, really every phase of the game to have any level of faith going into the rest of the season. The one positive, I guess, that's different from this year and years in the past is that if we do start with an 0-2 start, it's not going to be any divisional games, which is a nice change. Starting 0-1 the last 2 years against the Steelers and the Browns put us in a big hole in the AFC North, and obviously that's the number one goal for this team every single year is to win the division. Playing the Patriots and the Chiefs, you kind of thought at the beginning of the season that it was more likely than not we were going to start 1-1. You thought the win was going to come against the Patriots and the loss against the Chiefs, but it doesn't matter where the wins and losses come from. All that matters is the final tally at the end of the season. So if the Bengals can get out of week 2 at 1-1, I'm going to be ecstatic because that's what I expected coming in.
Luke, what do you think their chances are this weekend? I mean, realistically, all of a sudden, and Jacob touched on it, but all of a sudden, it is incredible how one game can change so much. It may not change what kind of season the Bengals ultimately have. I'm not saying that. Maybe it will. Maybe that game will cost them getting in the playoffs or having a home game in the playoffs or getting the number 1 seed. Maybe. But it's just amazing how one game changes the entire perception of now the next game. I mean, this was the game on the NFL schedule that everybody was going to be dialed in week 2. There have been some really good games already. But now all of a sudden people are going, Bengals going to Kansas City? Yeah, I know they beat them there before, but they just lost to the Patriots. Do you think they can bounce back and beat this Kansas City team? Do you think they will beat this Kansas City team?
I think it's crazy to come on here and be a complete homer and say that they will. I'm not going to say that they won't. I think that the point that Jacob brought up is probably the best point when you look at the lead up to this game is Bengals fans want to see something, whether it's covering the 6-point spread, whether it's losing. If they lose the way that Baltimore lost, then so be it. I'll start 0-2 knowing that the Cincinnati Bengals can play the Kansas City Chiefs to pretty much overtime. I'm fine with that. If they go out there and they're down 24-3 at half or down 2+ touchdowns, it's like, hey, we've seen a comeback at Arrowhead before, but Bengals fans, universally, everyone's going to be optimistic and saying, like, hey, we got to bounce back this early in the season. But week 1 was a disgusting loss. When you're a 9-point favorite, and it was more than that at some places in the National Football League, you are to win that game. You don't lose games where you're favored by a touchdown and a field goal in the National Football League. That is a huge number that the Bengals were posted at, and, can't blame the Bengals for being huge favorites, but that's where they were supposed to stack up and really take care of teams like the Patriots. So to not only play them close, but to lose that game and really down the stretch, the Bengals weren't even in it, just the way with how stagnant the offense was the entire day. I am concerned right now. And that first half at Arrowhead Stadium is going to tell me everything I need to know about where this team lies. If they can score in long drives, if they can score starting inside their own 20, if they can develop defensive stretches where they get hot, because that's something they've done against the Chiefs, where they've turned them over, got a couple 3-and-outs in a row against the best quarterback in the NFL. We'll see, and if we see at least glimpses of it, I'm personally okay with it. Some Bengals fans are going to call for a big bounce-back win, but at the end of the day, it's the Super Bowl champs on their home field.
Okay, all right, okay, I understand that. And we'll circle back on our picks. One note last night, once again, as we've said on this show for 3 years, when it comes to playing in a big game, the Miami Dolphins never are anywhere to be found. Never. The last big game they won was in '72 when they finished off an undefeated season. They're at home last night. Here come the Bills. Not the same Bills we've watched the last 2 or 3 years, at least not the same personnel in many cases for the last 2 or 3 years. One of the most talented teams in the league. They couldn't get over the hump. We know that. But, man, did they put it on Miami last night. I mean, now there is a team that was ready to play. And the first thing that people are going to say is, well, wait a minute, Tom, the Bengals have been to a Super Bowl. The Bengals have been to an AFC championship game. So that means that Zach Taylor, he's got to be better than Sean McDermott. All I'm saying is the Bills show up. They never not show up. They always show up. And, man, did they put it on Miami last night. Now, getting all the headlines is this Tua thing. Luke, I know you were watching. This is now 3 major concussions for Tua Tagovailoa. He had to leave the game. Ironically, he collides with Damar Hamlin, which caused the concussion. Boy, I have no doubt that right now there are very serious conversations taking place. First and foremost about Tua's health. How's he doing? I mean, how's he really doing? These are bad concussions this young man has suffered, and he's not even 26 years old yet. There are very serious conversations about his future right now. Conversations he's having with his doctors, conversations he's having with his family, conversations that are being held by the people that own and run the Miami Dolphins, the fans. This is serious stuff, Lukey.
Yeah, it is, and it's really sad. We hope that Tua's all right. I mean, what a good kid and a good start to his career. But it's actually absurd, these injuries and the whole fingers thing. It's just a really hard watch, and it makes you feel for the kid because you know how passionate he is about this game and kind of writing his own legacy. And the injuries have really stained him and the Dolphins. But for the most part, for the league's perspective, that was just another terrible night, a primetime game where it actually is Tua again who goes down with not just an injury, but one that's just publicly hard to watch. And from my room watching with my buddies, I just kind of took a deep breath and I said, guys, I would argue that that's Tua's last snap ever on a football field. It just seems like the way that this league operates and how national it is from a media's perspective, that a guy that has had these type of head injuries, they are really going to throw him back out there on the field to play again, to risk something even worse, because it's continuing to happen. And I don't know how it stacks up against the hit in Cincinnati, but that one was on, like, when it comes to the play, Tua's got to learn how to slide there. He dove headfirst into the guy, and the slow-mo replay is a lot worse than it was in live action. People in the chat, I saw it wasn't even that big of a hit. I mean, it was a really tough spot when you dive in with your shoulder and your neck is all in there, and then obviously it turned into a head injury. So we just hope Tua's all right. When it comes to the game, the Bills kicked butt. With the Tua getting hurt and whatnot, that game was over from a game's perspective. The Bills have been a huge underdog when it comes to the AFC this year. They're normally like that overhyped team in the AFC, and they do produce. The Bills consistently hit that double-digit win mark and compete in games. So you have to give Sean McDermott that amount of credit. But that's the argument with the Bengals that's interesting, where it's like the Bengals always seem to be flying behind and almost under the radar when it comes to the Bills and the Chiefs come the end of the year, and then it's the Bengals who are hot at that time and the Bills who slow down. The Chiefs are consistently dominant. So whatever works, the Bills right now are probably the best team in football, as they're the only team who's played 2 games yet, but they looked really good on every single level in Miami, and James Cook is going to be a hell of a running back for a long time.
No doubt. No doubt. I mean, he proved that last year that he's got the capability of being a really good player in this league. And, the reference was made. I was trying to see who made the reference in the chat. Talking about how the Buffalo defense, forgive me, I can't find this, but how they've gotten younger and faster. That's what they've gotten. They got themselves into some situations financially where they had to make serious changes. They didn't sit around and complain about it. If you remember, the Bills general manager was a guy 2 years ago who said, hey, just wait until the Bengals have to start paying some of these players that are no longer on rookie deals. Remember, he was the one that said that. He said, just wait and see what happens. Well, we're waiting and seeing. Burrow's got
the
big bucks.
Yeah. Their defense got better, and every headline and story and magazine is saying that the Bills' defense has some serious holes, if not the biggest holes, coming out of the offseason in the NFL. They have looked amazing, and that Miami is about as fast as it gets. But I want to get in the picks because we only have 20 minutes left. This is definitely the best part of the show. And I have a lot of redemption that I want to get done. It looks like I'm glitching a little bit.
You've got
right
a long
now.
way to go.
All right, I think I'm still lagging, so if you want to take this over, you can. The first game, though, is going to be in college football. It's going to be Cincinnati versus the Miami Redhawks.
Okay, go ahead. You pick first, big boy. No, I guess my name is up first there. I am taking the UC Bearcats. I'm a big fan of Coach Martin up at Miami. I think that it all depends on what he wants to do. He's going to get a chance to coach major Division I football in the not too distant future if he wants to. He's done a great job at Miami, but I think UC has better players. I think they have better talent. I think they're going to come in there and I think they're going to win. And I think they'll cover 3.5. Jacob?
I'm going the other way. I'm a known UC hater, so there's no time to change now. They're going up to Miami.
Why do you hate UC? Why would you hate UC?
I don't.
Why?
I don't even hate UC. UC fans just really annoy me. So when they play big time rivalry games against group of 5 teams, I'm going to root for the group of 5 team. It's just, I don't know. They made me mad, so
Okay.
so I'm rooting against them.
Fair.
And they're going up to Oxford,
Okay.
and I'm gonna take the Redhawks to win it for the second year in a row. There's a big old gap there from the last time they won the bell to last year, and I think they're gonna take it home on the home field. I had Miami being a much better team than we've seen so far through 2 weeks. But I do think they're going to turn it around, and I think it's going to start this week against UC. I expect Miami to win outright, much less cover the plus 3.5.
Okay, Lukey?
I'm going to roll with the Bearcats. I thought they looked pretty good offensively last week before blowing. I mean, how do you blow a 25-point lead?
Oh.
But we'll talk about that another time. I think Cincinnati is a really good team, and good teams bounce back. So I'm going to go with Cincinnati on the road. It's kind of a weird one. That's a funny point and certainly a sneak diss on UC that Jacob brings up, that their big rivalry game is against a group of 5 team. But Miami's a good football team. You know, they went and competed with Northwestern in the opening week. I am going to lay the 3.5, though, and rock with Cincinnati. Before we get into the rest of the picks, I do want to give a standings update. It is Casey and Jacob as their kind of a tag team. Number 1, tied with my dad at 5-2, and then there's me at the bottom. Yeah, I'm 0-9. Get the camera off me. We got work to do.
0-7. 0-7.
I mean, sorry, 0-7. Excuse me.
Give yourself some credit.
You'll be 0-9 with some of these picks you have coming up today, but go ahead.
We both took Cincinnati. What are you talking about? Next
I'm saying
game
the
that we're
one's still
picking.
to come.
Next game we're picking LSU versus South Carolina. This one's in Columbia. USC is 7-point underdogs. LSU coming off that loss. Brian Kelly getting a lot of, under some scrutiny for it. Those week 1 struggles from the Tigers, but an expanded playoff and a good spot to get a road win for South Carolina. You already know that place is going to be rocking. For my pick, I'm just going to straight up take South Carolina first. I think 7 is too many points. This is a spread that opened as a 10-point spread and has worked its way all the way down to 7. I think home underdogs are hungry, especially early in the season. And South Carolina, no one's talking about them. They might have had the best week 1 in all of college football. They went into Lexington and absolutely stomped Kentucky last week. I'll get South Carolina with the points.
Okay. Jacob, who are you picking?
I'm going with LSU. I think LSU really looked good against USC in that opening game. I like Garrett Nussmeier. I know there's a lot of questions about Brian Kelly and what he's able to do, but I really just do think LSU is a very talented team, and I think they're going to overpower South Carolina. I think the spread is an overreaction to how good South Carolina looked last week against a UK team that I think is pretty bottom of the barrel in the SEC. I think LSU is going to take care of business on the road fairly easily.
Okay, you guys got to help me because I feel absolutely foolish in what I'm about to say, because I always look at I for whatever reason, in the rare times when I look at lines and stuff like that, gambling, because I've said many times it's practically the only sin that I don't have is gambling. Is plus 7 meaning that South Carolina is a 7-point underdog?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Okay, I know that's a stupid question. If all of you are laughing at me, I'm taking LSU. I think Kelly has them ready to play. I think they're going to win the game. Next up.
All right, next game is Alabama against Wisconsin. Alabama, the number 4 ranked team in the nation, headed to Madison. Luke Fickell, head coach at UC, now at Wisconsin, hasn't really done much as a Badger, but it is the Big Ten. You got to give early head coaches some time. talk about making a statement if the Badgers were to be able to play with Alabama into the fourth quarter, let alone win the game. Dad, you go first on this one.
Look, I want to see Luke Fickell do well because I like the guy. I think he's an excellent coach. I thought he made the right move by going to Wisconsin. I certainly can hear the argument when people say, are you better off staying in a place like Cincinnati? Because he had a good thing going here. He had a real good thing going here. But it's a Big Ten. It's like you said. I mean, it's Wisconsin. It's money. It's facilities. It's NIL. It's all these kinds of things. Fickell did what he's supposed to do. Now, you got to deliver the goods once you get there. And I think sooner or later he will. But it ain't going to be against Alabama this week. I'm taking the Tide, plus 16.
Love it, Tom. Love it, Tom. And no surprises here. I'm doing the same thing. I know Alabama didn't look great last week against USF, but they pulled away and won by almost 30. So they're going to take care of business in Madison this weekend. I don't think it's going to be a very close game at all. 16 might be half as big as I think that margin's going to be.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you guys. Jacob making his debut on our show at least. You got to go with the Tide. So roll Tide, roll, blitz, Bama, blitz, Alabama all the way across the board for us. I mean, the way I'm going, you two are totally screwed with this pick, so at least you get a loser along with me. Next game, this is actually one of the only, if not the only, ranked matchup when it comes to both teams being in the AP top 25. Little ACC, SEC, and it's Boston College who has now snuck into the rankings at 24th. They travel to Columbia, Missouri, where Mizzou is 16-point favorites. So back-to-back 16-point spread. Dad, you go first on this one. I guess people really think Mizzou's good, not only with this number, but that tag, number 6 next to their name. They got something going over there.
Well, they got something going. I don't think there's any doubt about that. They have a bunch of guys that came back from a team that was very, very good last year. But I tell you, I had a chance to be around Bill O'Brien, the head coach at Boston College during the ACC meetings. And I had been around him a number of times before when I announced some of the games when he was a coach of the Texans. This guy knows how to coach. Now, you got to have players to win games. But Boston College has one of the most exciting players in the country. Thomas Castellanos is their quarterback. This dude can really play, and he can make things happen with his legs, throwing the ball. O'Brien will have a great game plan. Now, whether or not he has the horses to win the game, I don't know, but I'm picking BC to cover.
Tom, I wanted to join you.
Jake?
I wanted to join you real bad. I love Boston College. I think they have a lot of skill. I think they're a lot better than people give them credit for. And Bill O'Brien's going to get them to a point where they're competitive in the ACC. I just don't think that happens yet. It's a bigger number than I expected, but Missouri's incredibly talented. They might have the best wide receiver in the entire country in Luther Burden, and I think just the overall team speed and skill is going to take over. I know Boston College is ranked 24, but they're riding that off of a top 10 win against Florida State. So I'm not entirely sure how great they are, and I think Missouri has a chance to muddy the waters a little bit in the SEC. So I'm going to take them to win this one and cover.
All right, Lookie. Did we lose Luke here?
I'm not hearing Luke. I'm not hearing Luke.
I'm not hearing Luke either.
Nothing has
Luke,
changed
did you
on
hit a
my
mute
end.
button?
I'm good now.
What's
Sorry.
that?
All right.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
You can't give me those scares. You can't give me those scares when I'm back here, Luke.
I know.
That one was my fault. So Trace, if you're watching, everyone, that was on me, not Jacob. No, all jokes aside, I think Missouri's a national championship contender. They really are knocking on the door of being in that top 3 SEC team category. I think they win this game by 3 touchdowns. I will say Boston College is pretty good, so keep an eye on them, especially within the ACC this year. But I think it's just a BC team that's on the rise, but not there just yet, and Missouri is absolutely there. They win this game by 21 points.
Wow. Okay. All right. Okay. Where are you taking us next?
Let's speed it up a little here because we got to get to the NFL picks. But the last game in college, Kentucky versus the number 1 team in the country, the Georgia Bulldogs, 24-point spread. I think it's too many points. I know Kentucky got boat raced last week, but they actually do typically play tough in Athens until the fourth quarter. I think 24 is going to be too many. I'm going to hang on and kind of cross my fingers for dear life. Give me the Wildcats.
I'm going to take Georgia.
I'm taking Georgia.
I just think they're so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, Tom, but yeah, I totally agree.
No, go ahead. Chalk them both up. Move on.
Yeah, I think they're just incredible. Best team in the country. They haven't lost in about 40 regular season games. I don't think it's going to start now.
I don't know if they're the best team in the country or not. That team up in Columbus is pretty good.
I wouldn't complain about that.
All right.
All right. Time for the big boys, and that's the National Football League. So the record that we gave you at the start was our college football picks. This is our first week picking NFL because we did not pick NFL games last season. And we're going to start with a matchup of two teams that are 2-0 and a matchup of two teams that looked really good, actually exceptional in week one. That's the Saints and the Dallas Cowboys. This one's in Dallas. Cowboys are touchdown favorites. Dad, what do you got?
I got the Dallas Cowboys. I think they look good. They got a good team. They're not going to win the Super Bowl, but they're going to beat up on the Saints. Saints played a terrible team last week. They look great. Give them credit, but I'm taking Dallas.
Yeah, I'm going with Dallas too. When Tom sent his picks, I felt real good agreeing with him on a lot of these because especially with Luke's record, that seemed like the way to go. So I'm going with the Cowboys too. I don't think the Saints are anything special. They dominated a team that probably wouldn't even win the MAC in the Carolina Panthers. So I'm going with the Cowboys.
Luke, he's beating you down pretty good. Who are you picking?
I'm not going to use week one bias too much. I'm going to go with the Saints, though. I think the Cowboys looked really good against a Browns team that people thought would be good, and I'm already sold that the Browns are going to stink this year. Deshaun Watson is not that worth that much money, let alone not a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. Derek Carr played his butt off last week. Give me the Saints on the road in Dallas.
Wow. Okay. What's
next game could arguably be the game of the week here, just from two really good teams. The Buccaneers 1-0 start, and boy, they just grind out wins. This is a team with Baker Mayfield who has just found their identity in the post-Brady era, and they said, hey, we might not have Brady anymore, but we're here to stay when it comes to playoff talk. So give them credit, but the Lions, they really think that they have a chance to win the Super Bowl, if not be a top two favorite. Lions 7-point favorites in Detroit. I'm going to go with the Lions. I think they're that good. Their game against the Rams last week went to overtime, but I think the Lions just take care of business in this one, win this by 2 touchdowns.
Jake?
Yep, I'll go the other way. I'm going to take the Buccaneers. I think in week one, when the offenses across the league struggled more than we've seen in a long time, the Buccaneers looked unbelievable. Baker Mayfield looked unbelievable. And obviously against a defense that isn't great in the Commanders, but I still think that full touchdown is a little too much in the NFL. We saw it with the Bengals and the Patriots this last weekend. If you give me a spread above a touchdown, I'm probably taking the underdog in professional football.
Yeah, I struggle with this one. I want to buy into the Lions. They had a great year last year. They played a last place schedule last year. That's not the case this year. I want to buy into them because I root for our buddy Lukey, Chris Spielman, who's the president of the franchise. But, I think they've got a good team, and I think they got enough to cover the 7. I'm taking Detroit at home.
All right. Big game here for the sake of the division and the AFC. The Jags hosting the Browns. The Browns looked terrible in week one. The Jaguars lose in week one to the Dolphins. That loss now looks even worse after the Dolphins' performance last night on Thursday Night Football. Jags, though, over a field goal favorite with 3 and a hook here at home. I think it's a really good number, and I'm going to lay that number. I think if I were to actually bet it, I'd probably buy the half point down to 3. But the Jags will beat the Browns. The Browns are that bad. I said it just a couple minutes ago. I think the Browns actually stink. They're going to have a bad year. I'm completely giving up on their offense, and that might come back to bite me. But Kevin Stefanski might get rung this year. Clip that and mark my words. Give me the Jags in week 2 to cover the number.
Okay,
this is,
Jacob, who are you going with here?
I guess my first loss because I agree with Luke. I'm going with the Jags as well.
Oh, boy.
The Browns are terrible. He's absolutely right. Deshaun Watson has forgotten how to play football, and this whole time that was the one thing I always said. I said, Deshaun's not just going to forget how to play football. Well, it seems like he has, so I don't think 3.5 is enough. The Jags are a good team. I think they'll be on the doorstep of the playoffs, if not in it. The Browns at the bottom of the AFC.
Okay, I can't remember who I picked, but I struggle because I look at this game. I picked the Jags. That's fine. I'll stay with them. I could see Cleveland winning the game though. But you're right. You made a great point right there. And I know we're hurrying through some of these other games. What has happened to Deshaun Watson? We'll save that for another day. What has happened to this guy? All right, Luke, what's next?
Final game of the week, ladies and We saved ourselves some time for this one. Got about 5 minutes to discuss the Bengalis and the Chiefs. We talked about the Bengals. 6-point underdogs, Kansas City at home. I'm not going to go as far as saying the words Burrowhead. Yeah, there it is. I just said it.
Oh.
But a lot to prove here for both teams. If you're Kansas City, you go and you beat the Ravens in week 1 and the Bengals in week 2. You guys say everybody wants to say, oh, who's going to win the AFC? The Bills, the Bengals, the Ravens, the Chiefs run the AFC. And if you're going to win the AFC, let alone a Super Bowl, it goes through Kansas City. The Bengals, they need to start here. And if you think I'm picking anything but the Cincinnati Bengals, you are mistaken. Give me the Bengals with the 6. I hope they win this game outright.
Good man, Luke. Good man. I'm doing the same thing. I know Casey would want me to take the Bengals. He'd never let me hear the end of it if I stuck him with a Chiefs pick next to his name. So I'm doing the right thing for our guy. I'm going with the Bengals. Look, I think they're going to keep it close. I think they're going to cover. I hope they win. I'm not going to go that far, but I certainly think it's a competitive game, and that's what I want to see most.
Sorry, fellas, I don't see it. I'm rooting for them. I'm rooting for them. I want the Bengals to win. I want them to win bad, but I don't see it. I told myself, you guys may remember, I've told myself 2 years ago, I will never again bet against any game that Mahomes plays in. I would never bet against him ever again, nor will I. I hope the Bengals win. I don't see it happen.
Fair enough. I mean, this game, it's going to say a lot, guys. I think Jacob hit the nail on the head earlier, and I keep referring back to it. It's about showing glimpses of being a good, if not great team in the NFL, whether that's a couple of defensive series, whether that's Burrow getting pinned within their own 10 and putting together a 7-minute, 12-play drive. That's just stuff that we didn't see in week 1. So when it comes down to that, take the spread out of it, take gambling out. At the end of the day, we're all Bengals fans and root for the Bengals to have success this season. I think it could start in Burrowhead, but we'll see. I mean, the chat, how are we feeling about the Bengals' chances? Dad, you're already sold on them. You're a Bengals hater. We know that.
I am not a Bengals hater. Nobody roots for them more than I do. I'm waiting for somebody to ask questions in these press conferences of what was the game plan on offense last week? What was it? I mean, the best drive of the day that they had is when they ran the ball almost every play. They complete one pass down the field, and that wasn't until the fourth quarter when they hit Chase for 28 yards. I mean, who are they? What's their identity? What do they want to be? I mean, I just look at that, and I just want somebody to ask Zach Taylor, what was your game, or Dan Pitcher, what was your game plan on offense in the first week of the season? What was it? And so now I'm supposed to buy into them going and taking it to Kansas City? Come on, that's not being a hater. You know that.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, I think that's going to do it. Dad, you're in Winston-Salem, Ole Miss v. Wake Forest. I'm going to give my best to the Indiana Hoosiers this weekend as they go to Pasadena tomorrow night to play UCLA. But Jacob, thanks for coming on with us. You got a lot of pressure on you. Casey's money with the picks, whether it's NBA player props or now week 1 of college football, but we'll see where we stack up come Monday.
Oh, boy, yeah, I know. He was blowing up my phone, making sure I got him right, knowing how much pressure I had on my shoulders today. Hopefully I make him proud throughout the weekend. I'll definitely be keeping an eye on these.
All right, gentlemen. Well, thank you very much, Luke. Safe travels up to Chicago this weekend. Please be careful. Like Luke, let's all of us make good decisions over the weekend. Lukey, have fun up there this weekend, and I hope for your sake that it's not another Ofer, because that will be your nickname next week if you don't win.
No, I might sweep both slates and come back and just come crawling up the top of the leaderboard. And I mean, you guys can already feel it. I know the full court press is already on you guys. This is a long game, and you just got to string together a couple profitable weeks. And you guys did it in week 1, but the show goes on.
Okay. All right. Jacob, thank you. Lukey, thank you. Everybody have a great weekend. We'll be back 9 o'clock Monday morning to talk about the Bengals. It's a 4:25 kick on Sunday afternoon. And so Bearcats and the Red Hawks tomorrow. Big weekend of college football. and the pro game on Sunday. So thanks to all. It is time right now. Let's send it to our guys back there at the studio. Jacob's ready to go. Let's send it to Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers.
The Browns, they're putrid. They're the worst team in the NFL.
The season, the 2024 season is over.
Lamar Jackson can't win the playoffs. He'll win a third MVP, though, so that's great.
Drew Sample is the most important piece of the Bengals offense next year.
Go Joe Burrow. He deserves to be MVP. I wish he was the Browns quarterback. Kind of mean that.
If you're looking for the most reactionary, silly, and unserious show on the internet, then you're home. Live from Hamilton, Ohio, it's Off the Bench by Chatterbox Sports on 1410 ESPN Radio.
Welcome on in. I am not Justin Kinner. I am your good friend, Elliot. Welcome on into Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. We've got a great show for you today. It's Friday.
You're going to want to run all that back.
Gonna have to run it all
You're
back.
going to run all that back.
No mics.
Go ahead and just run all that back.
All right, we're gonna run it all back. Hold on. So let's get back into gear. Hold on. Here we go. Well, hello there. I am not Justin Kinner. I am your friend, Elliot. Welcome on in. This is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. For those listening on the radio, we thank you very much, wherever you're driving out today, or if you're listening on one of the apps, the iHeartRadio app, or any of the other apps. Or if you're just hanging out with an old-timey radio thing that people used to use, but now they don't because they seem irrelevant. Maybe like a boom box. Maybe if boom boxes still have the radio function, you could do that. But welcome on in to Off the Bench. Jacob just was on, what do we got? Dialed in. Thank you,
I was
Tom
more
and Luke.
dialed in this morning than I have been
Really?
in maybe years. I don't know that I've ever been as dialed in as I was this morning. And shout out everyone that was dialed in with us. And shout out everyone that joined the Chatterbox Bengals stream last night. It was a fun time trying to gather together as much optimism as possible going into Kansas City.
Yeah. So, by the way, just some notes. Last night we got a text. Kinner was maybe having some frustrations, and he said he's out. He's gone. So we'll see if Kinner comes back to Hamilton, Ohio again. I'd put the odds at 50-50. You know what hosts are to return back to this show. So we don't know. We just never know. Also, real quick, I'm going to change these things at the bottom of the screen. I'm going to try to be funny with it. So
all right.
Hold on. So Jacob, what did you learn from the show that you just did?
So what I learned from the show that I just did is that I'm not the only one who didn't care about Alabama looking bad last week, which is good because they also, Tom and Luke, both picked Alabama as well this week as 16-point favorites in Madison, Wisconsin. And I thought maybe I was getting a little over my skis, a little not paying as much attention as I should to a bad game. But it seems like everyone's on the same page with me. So that's good. Luke, much more optimistic about the Bengals than Tom this weekend, but I'm not sure that that's much of a surprise. And Luke has not won a pick yet this year. I think we should bring that news over into this show as well. He went 0-7 last week in his picks, so he's hoping to turn that around. And not great news that he picked the Bengals.
People say I'm a bad gambler. You sent me this information last night, and I'll tell you what, maybe Luke's the worst gambler of Chatterbox Sports. And I wouldn't be shocked. I wouldn't be shocked.
You know who's not the worst gambler at Chatterbox Sports?
Who?
Craig Sandlin.
Is he good?
Craig Sandlin went perfect last night on Chatterbox Bengals.
It's pretty good.
Bills money line, under 8 rushing yards, all 3 smacked.
Josh Allen is now 7-0. 7-0 on Thursday night football games. So
can we just admit he's good?
I think he's good.
All right, good quarterback.
And it doesn't matter really who he's throwing to either. That's the funny part.
Exactly. Zero yards for Keon Coleman.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's incredible. So, listen, shout out to the Buffalo Bills. We'll talk about that in a second. I guess we'll start with some headlines. I don't have many of them, but nonetheless, I'll read them. So we'll start with the Reds. It's always fun to talk about the Reds on a Friday. They lose. They lost this. They lost.
You don't want it?
They lost the series. Don't want what?
You don't want it?
Don't want what?
Thanks.
Oh, I forgot we had that.
Bell, and leading off the bench with top headlines.
You're not playing?
No, it is.
Oh, okay.
I just can't hear it. So, is it done? I don't know if it's done or not.
Yeah, I don't either, so we'll go back to Elliot.
Okay, 3 things I love about the Reds, something terrible, yada, 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 and Joey Votto. But anyway, so we have the Reds losing the series finale in St. Louis 6-1. The final score, as the Reds only mustered up 4 hits. Sonny Gray had a perfect game through 5 innings before Jake Fraley finally broke it up in the top of the 6th. I think the Reds are the most consistently no-hit team through 5 innings in the major leagues. Like if there was a bet on one of the sports books, no free ads, but I use FanDuel, and so if there was a bet on FanDuel that gave me the odds, the Reds wouldn't have a hit through 5 innings, which there might actually be that. I would bet it every single time because I feel like that happens far more often than it should. But
now, I know the answer to this because everyone knows that we dominate the Astros.
Yeah.
We haven't lost to them in forever. But I feel like the exact opposite of that is the Astros, who consistently throw no-hitters until like the 6th, 7th, 8th inning before they blow it. You would think that if you matched those 2 teams up, you would get dominance from the other one.
Yeah.
The Reds have continued to beat the Astros, so we do have that banner from this year. So that's a good thing.
We have 15 banners from this year, each one more worthless than the next. Jake Fraley broke up the perfect game in the top of the 6th inning with a base hit. Jacob Junis, solid again, 5 innings of 3-hit, 1-run baseball. He struck out 3 as well. ERA dropping to 2.73. You can't blame the starting pitching ever, even when the starting pitching is the bullpen. Spires looked atrocious. Looks like this will be the end of Spires' run here in Cincinnati.
But he started, right?
But he did start,
Yeah.
and that's what you have to give Brian B. credit for. He gave up 4 earned runs on 7 hits and 3 walks and 2 2/3 innings. Jonathan India drove in the lone run for the Cincinnati Reds. They are back at it tonight in Minnesota, where it will be Julian Aguilar versus Bailey Ober. Ober 12-6 on the year with a 3.77 ERA. Aguilar has a 5.06 ERA in his limited run here in Cincinnati. But nonetheless, have fun with that. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't think there's a number where you could pay me to watch this game tonight.
Okay.
If somebody came out to me and said, Elliot, here's $10,000, you just got to watch every pitch of the Reds game. You can't have your cell phone. You can't have any distractions. You just have to be locked into the Reds game. That's it. On Bally Sports. I don't think there's a number. I really don't. On a Friday night. I'm out.
It would be a high number, but there's definitely a number for me.
It would be a very high number. 8:15 the first pitch, so...
Oh, never mind.
Yeah, 8:15.
Never mind. There's no number.
Let's go into 11:30. Have fun with that. Around the league.
Shout out our interns.
Yes. Shout out to our
flipping
interns
that.
for doing that. Thank you very much on a Friday night. We love you.
Shout out.
Around the league, the Brewers shut out the Giants 3-0. Frankie Montas pitched 6 scoreless innings. Turns out he might just be good with the Brewers, so that's tough.
Oh, no. Who could have called that?
Nobody, except everybody.
Except for everybody.
The Rangers, they won 5-4 over Seattle. Kumar Rocker struck out 7 in his debut.
A little fun nugget about that. His father is a defensive line coach for the Titans. So
Really?
He flew to Seattle last night. I believe Seattle, right, is where
Yep.
they were playing. He flew to Seattle last night, watched his son's major league debut, which is incredible and obviously a life-changing moment for a family. And then he left right after the game, flew overnight to get back to Tennessee for practice today.
How about that?
So that's a football guy move and potential Dad of the Year candidate, I think.
The Rays beat the Guardians 5-2. The Yankees, they barely hang on to beat the Red Sox. But Aaron Judge has yet to hit a home run, or has failed to hit a home run, in his last 16 games.
You could say
Is
that.
that-
You could also say Aaron Judge has failed to hit a home run since he participated in the home run derby on Paw Patrol.
Excuse me?
His guest appearance on Paw Patrol, they had a home run derby, and he has not hit a home run since.
That's absolutely incredible. And if you're
They always say the derby messes up your swing. Seems to happen to Aaron Judge.
I mean, that's outrageous. What an outrageous. How did you even hear about that?
X.com. I'm not going to
course.
act like I watch Paw Patrol.
Of course. Rockies, they beat the Tigers, and Astros took care of business against the Athletics. That was pretty much it from the baseball world. From other worlds, Thursday Night Football was last night, and the Bills obliterated the Dolphins 31-10. Shout out to me for being on the Bills. Tua was 17 for 25 with a touchdown, 3 interceptions. He couldn't have looked worse, and you just write it off to a bad game. But wait. You actually might be able to look a little bit worse because, unfortunately, the story of the game is a concussion. That occurred in the second half. Tua was pulled from the game after a collision with
Our guy.
Damar Hamlin. It's his third official listed head injury, I believe, suffered in the NFL. Not what you want to see if you're a Dolphins fan. Not what you want to see if you're Tua's family, anybody close to him, a friend, a teammate. This is the kind of stuff that is gonna maybe shorten his career. And we can talk about that in a minute. I'll read the final stats here, but brutal, absolutely a brutal blow for the Dolphins and for Tua especially, because we joke about the NFL and gambling and everything that goes into sports, but when you have a guy that's a franchise player and he suffered just devastating head injury after devastating head injury, it's time to start thinking about protecting the player. I don't know how much longer he's able to go in the NFL, and we'll talk about that in a second. James Cook rushed 11 times for 78 yards, 2 touchdowns, including a 49-yard run. He also caught his lone target on a 17-yard touchdown.
Fun James Cook nugget. 2 rushing touchdowns in 2022.
Really?
2 rushing touchdowns in 2023. 2 rushing touchdowns last night.
How about that? Did he only have 2 rushing touchdowns last year?
That's right.
What?
Yeah.
Didn't he start?
Most were receiving. And Josh Allen takes a lot of their goal line carries.
That's crazy. Oh, my goodness. But, yeah, that's it for Thursday Night Football. 31-10, the final score. And the Miami season kind of feels to be unraveled. But, Jacob, I don't know. You obviously were with a football program more closely than I've ever been with a football program, associated with a football program. The new helmets they're introducing, are you going to start seeing players being forced to wear these?
Tua kind of was.
Was he?
Not forced, but Tua kind of was, quote unquote, forced to wear the vices. He wore Speed Flex at the right L with the plate in the front, the I guess standard, if you want to call it that, helmet in the NFL that most players wear. He wore the Speed Flex all through college, all through the first few years in the league. I believe he was wearing the Speed Flex in Cincinnati when that incident occurred. After that, he switched to the vices full time, which is that bigger, bubblier helmet that you see him wear. Patrick Mahomes wears it as well. I think the next step a lot of people are calling for, I see Craig in the chat saying it as well, is that he should add the Guardian cap on top, that little soft layer that you see a lot of players wearing now in the NFL to add a little bit more cushion. But at some point, stop playing. I don't know how many different things are you going to try. I don't know who I was watching last night. I assume most people, but as Elliot said, the game was already out of reach by the time Tua got hurt. And when he got up, thankfully got off the field on his own power, walking. But I mean, it looked like he had no idea where he was.
Yeah, I'm not a doctor, and I don't pretend to be, and I don't know anything medically. But again, it's every concussion he's had that I've seen. It's been like very visible, noticeable, like concussion-like symptoms.
That's what I said on Dialed In this morning. Is you see so many concussions in the NFL anyway that you don't find out until after the game or at halftime in the locker room or something. You say, oh, you got to go back and find the play.
Yeah.
These aren't those concussions with Tua. These are ambulance to the hospital. Are you able to move your limbs concussions?
Yeah.
When the first report after multiple of your concussions early in your career is he's able to move his extremities, not the best thing. There's plenty of concussions that happen, and I'm not downplaying the importance of every concussion. Brain injuries are something is a big issue in football, and every single one is important to monitor. But there's plenty of concussions that happen in the NFL that we aren't talking about whether or not they can move their arms and legs.
Yeah.
And it seems like it's every time with Tua. And people forget that the injury thing with him isn't new for the NFL. He had an injury in college where a nerve in his hip was pinched between the bone, the Bo Jackson injury. And there was talk about whether or not he'd ever play football again. Obviously, he worked his way back and was able to get to the NFL. Maybe I'm a bad person, but the first thing I saw when I thought when I saw him go down is what happens to that guaranteed money of that contract he just signed.
Yeah, so we'll talk about that and some more. We're talking about the Bills, Dolphins, Thursday Night Football. What happened with Tua is very, very sad, and it's time to start protecting players, especially when you have three. Usually it's the three strikes policy. This is the third strike, and I don't know how, if you're the NFL, you can continue to have him run out there and say you're for player safety.
At what level do you start getting a little liability?
Yeah, it's right around now. I would say if he comes back out and it happens again, that's all in the NFL because it could have been stopped. But we'll talk about that and some more. Off the bench, ESPN 1410, Wing AM, thank you very much for listening on the radio. And for those on the YouTube, we love you still. God bless everybody, and we'll be right back with you. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. When I worked for the radio, and I don't know if you know this, I did work for the radio.
No, I didn't know that.
I had these bumper music. I had bumper music that I'd lined up for different hosts. I'd always do Brick House for Sunday morning sports talk with Ken Brew. I'd always have Brick House as one of the songs, as one of the bumper musics.
And letting it all hang out. Oh, she's a brick.
Nonsense. That was really
great song.
Really good impression.
Thank you.
For Lance McAllister, I think I Wear My Sunglasses at Night. That was one of my favorites to play. I'm trying to think of who I did for. I always did Pitbull for Mo, but that was a joke. He doesn't like Pitbull. But yeah, listen. So back to this discussion, and welcome on in to Off the Bench. United Dairy Farmers is the sponsor of our show. We have a couple other sponsors we'll get to later. Tua, the third official listed head injury sustained in the NFL. I don't know. I think if you're going to start implementing the Guardian cap, if he comes back, he almost certainly has to wear it. And I don't know if you give him the ability to make his own call on this. Because every player that's in the NFL or really in professional sports, these are competitors. They want to go out there and play. They want to go out there and be there for their teammates. You want to make your money. I mean, let's not pretend that's not going to be a factor here. You want to be able to provide for your family, provide for your friends, those around you. It's generational type money he's earning, and now you're going to maybe threaten to take it away from him.
Yeah.
And I don't know what you do really. Here, my thoughts on it are this: the Dolphins knew that he had suffered 2 serious concussions when you paid him that contract. They knew that. So when he happens to have another serious head injury, I really do think, and it's going to be unfortunate for the Dolphins, but I think you have to pay a lot of it out to him. I think you have to, and contractually, I'm pretty sure it's going to be in there where they have to anyway.
Yeah.
But morally speaking, I think you have to give it to him. I don't know.
Well, they don't. It's not even going to come down to that. It's not even going to come down to morally speaking. Tua gets $93 million, no questions asked, because that was the guarantees as throughout the first few years of his contract. $42 million of that was the upfront signing bonus, and he has $167 million of that $212 million contract tied to an injury guarantee.
Yeah.
So if he's unable to play because of any kind of injury, obviously last night would be that. If he hangs it up because of these concussions, $167 million of that $212 million will be in his pocket regardless of what decision he makes. And then that moral dilemma comes in of what else do you do? But you also have to toe the line of setting your franchise back for a long, long time, because paying a quarterback $55 million sets your franchise back anyway in what you're able to do, and that's with them on the field playing at a high level. Paying someone this much money against the cap and them not contributing to your team, that's the Dolphins. If Tua does hang it up and they can't get any, cap relief or anything like that, they could be in a really, really bad spot for a while, but there's no other option, really.
If I'm the Dolphins, I have a very serious discussion, and I probably have somebody from the NFL down there during this discussion. And you talk to Tua and you say, how old is he? Is he 26?
Not even.
Tua, let's see. I'm just going to look up the age right now. He is 26. You're 26 years old. You've got a lot of life left ahead of you. You're about to be a very rich person with this contract.
You have a wife.
You have a family, you have friends. There's more important things than football. And if I were the Dolphins, I wouldn't want to be responsible for the demise of a player like this, having to keep running him out and risk these concussions, these head injuries. If you're the NFL, I really wouldn't. I wouldn't allow it. I think for a league that preaches player safety, to have a guy have 3, and I'm talking very serious concussions. These aren't like just little tiny things. As Jacob said, every single one of these concussions has shown signs that I don't know if he's getting back up.
Right.
And that's the scariest thing. Truly, it's over the past couple of seasons now. Those are the scariest moments we've had in the NFL with Tua, and it's. I'd look at him and I'd say, listen, we thank you very much, but you have a life to live. You have an entire life to live. The NFL, you were a very good quarterback in the NFL, but we can't have you die on our field. We can't have it happen. So if I were the NFL, I'd stop it. If I were the Miami Dolphins, if the NFL doesn't stop it, I'd stop it there. And if I was Tua, again, I can't act like I'm going to talk for him here, but I would seriously say it's time to hang it up. Andrew Luck retired when he knew his body couldn't do it anymore, right before the season. If I'm Tua, I say, you know what? We're going to reevaluate. We're going to take this season off. We're going to reevaluate to see if
he comes back this season at all.
That's what I'm saying. Like I think there's a chance he might come back next year, but you can't have him come out there game after game and take a 2-game break and then have your head hit again.
No,
it just can't happen.
And that's what happened last time.
So
he came back after that Bengals one, and he got smashed by the goal line, and he hobbled getting up and barely even got caught with that concussion. So who knows if he gets another one that flies under the radar, he could really have some long-term damage.
Yeah, I'm just hoping for the well-being of him, for the well-being of his family, and everybody that's being affected by this right now. So hopefully everything's good. It looked like he was able to walk off the field.
Yep.
If there was any positives in that, I don't know if that is a positive. But nonetheless, we'll see what the NFL does. We'll see what the Dolphins do, and we'll see what Tua wants to do. Because, again, it's very difficult for me to sit up here and say that guy should be playing again ever, let alone this season. So outside of that, Thursday Night Football, it was a blowout. I mean, Josh Allen, here's the thing about Josh Allen. He doesn't really have to do that much.
Right.
I mean, he's 13 of 19 last night.
Yeah.
139 yards, a touchdown.
Both week 1 and week 2 now fall in the top 5 least amount of completed passes from a start in Josh Allen's career.
That's crazy.
It's a completely different offense.
He didn't really run the ball at all last night either. I mean, he didn't have to. James Cook kind of carried the way, and the Dolphins offense couldn't score any points. But nonetheless, the Bills are really good. And I think a lot of people, and maybe it was right, to write them off at the beginning of the year. The Jets are a new, flashy team. You get Aaron Rodgers back. You have the best defense in the NFL. You've got some very talented skill positions in Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson. You still have the Dolphins. The Dolphins are a threat in that division when Tua is available to play. And you say the Bills, they don't have any wide receivers. They have a decent tight end who hasn't been used this season. Did he have a catch last night? 2 catches?
65 points
4
for the
catches.
Bills through weeks 1 and 2, and Dalton Kincaid is not a top 30 fantasy tight end.
Crazy. And they have James Cook's a fine running back. I don't think anybody's out here saying James Cook's a top 10, top 15 running back. And do you have a defense that has nobody and nothing? And I say that with a lot of love and respect. And you say, look, the Bills aren't going to be that team this year. They're not going to be the Super Bowl contender, because we've come in to the past 2 or 3 seasons now with the Bills being a top 4, top 3 Super Bowl contending odds via Vegas. And I don't think anybody had that this year. And I think you're slowly starting, especially, and again, I don't mean to pile on the Dolphins here, but obviously if Skylar Thompson's your quarterback, that team's not going to win many games. So you now have a division that's open for the taking. You have Josh Allen as your quarterback, and I really do believe they might have a chance here to make a deep postseason run. As long as Josh Allen is healthy, you're going to have a chance.
My reservations about the Bills, and I didn't have them in the AFC playoffs when we did preseason predictions, and right hand up, that might be a mistake, and I'll be looking pretty silly at the end of the year, but it was never an indictment on Josh Allen. I understand that they don't have great weapons, but I never for a second thought Josh Allen was going to be a bad quarterback this year. If they made the playoffs or, God forbid, somehow compete for a Super Bowl, he's going to be in the MVP discussion. And that conversation is why I didn't believe in the Bills. It's because of everything around him. He's incredible. In my opinion, he's the second best quarterback in the NFL. But when Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, and Curtis Samuel are your top three receivers, James Cook, like Elliott said, coming into this season, no one thought he was anywhere near what he was able to do last night. Having a legitimate running back next to Josh Allen when we know what he can do from a dual threat standpoint makes that team so much more dynamic than we've seen in a long time. They haven't had a good running back. Even when they had Stephon Diggs, their running game wasn't phenomenal outside of Josh Allen. We thought James Cook was going to change that a few years ago. Maybe it just took a little bit for him to get up to speed, but he looks great. He was a dominant player at Georgia, so you knew it could come at some point. He's a great receiver, which is something that seemingly every running back that's worth anything has to do these days. And I think the Bills are just figuring it out. If they ran the same offense they've ran for the last few years, they would not be 2-0. If Josh Allen was throwing the ball 40 times a game, they would not be 2-0. They've changed their offense. They changed their scheme to match better with their new roster. And that's what good teams do. That's what competitive teams do. So I couldn't be happier with what I've seen from the Bills so far. And I did like what I saw from the Jets. So my division prediction's not changing yet. But that defense doesn't look nearly as bad as I thought it would coming into this season. They seem to have plugged some holes. Von Miller, 2 sacks in 2 games. Maybe he'll at least be some percentage of himself that we've seen before and help them change some things on the defense. So, yeah, I guess we'll see. But another injury to the middle of the defense yesterday. Terrell Bernard, their linebacker, out for the remainder of that game. Haven't heard about the long-term nature of that injury, but obviously already lost Matt Milano, Tre'Davious White playing elsewhere. The injuries across that team have been talked about ad nauseum, and just another one to a key piece last night. So they've been great so far. They've been able to withstand everything so far, but how much more can they take before they're no longer competitive? And I've heard a lot of people say, well, the injuries are out of the way now. They're going to get healthy, and they'll be good to go by playoff time. If that happens, phenomenal. But what happens when the second-string guy gets hurt? Just because the first-string guy got hurt in the preseason instead of Week 15 doesn't mean you're good on injuries for the rest of the year. If their second and third-string linebacker gets hurt, now they're going to practice squad guys. If they're not there already, you're losing the ability to be competitive pretty quickly. They don't have much leash when it comes to guys being in and out of the lineup now. They need everyone on every game. So far, they've had it through 2 games, an incredible comeback against Arizona, and then a throttling of Miami last night. And people have been pointing to his injury, saying, of course, Buffalo beat him by a lot. That game was well taken care of before he went down. The Bills dominated that game, all 3 touchdowns for James Cook in the first half. I think they're closer to what they were in the last few years than what people expected them to be this year. That's for sure.
Yeah, and you look at their next 4 games. They take the Jaguars on Monday night. The Ravens in Baltimore. That's another back-to-back primetime games. Then you take on the Texans in Houston, and then you go to New York and play the Jets, another primetime game. They have 3 primetime games in their next 4 against pretty decent opponents. So if they can weather the storm here and get through these next 4 games, I think you're looking at a team that might be competing for that 1 seed in the AFC. I really do think so, especially given the state of the Dolphins, which – again, I think Mike McDaniel in the press conference said, it's not about the timetable. Nobody's worried about the timetable. It's just about Tua.
And that's what you want to hear.
Correct. And it's just about looking out for our guy. So we'll see what happens with the Dolphins. The Bills, they look good. They look good after we don't know what happened in the first half of Arizona, but they look good now. Yeah. So that's 6 straight quarters of dominant football, and hopefully, I don't know, I'm going to cheer for the Bills because I think Josh Allen's a fun quarterback, and him single-handedly carrying that team to a Super Bowl would be a hell of a story. So, nonetheless, that's it. So we're going to talk about Bengals Chiefs coming up. We also are going to pick, I think we're going to pick a record number of NFL games in this show. Is that right?
And I'll tell you right now, Elliot, and this is a peek behind the curtain for the chat. We're going to pick as many NFL games as we have to pick. And that's really it.
Yeah.
And if we have to go to week 3, gosh darn it, we'll go to week 3.
I'm going to make something very clear. We are going to keep picking NFL games until the clock runs out. So that's what we're going to do today, and we'll see how far that can take us. But also,
There's 16 of them.
Yeah. 16.
The over-under's at like 14.5.
Yeah, I think we're going to go over, but we'll see. We also are going to do a segment that I do every single year. It is called the Reds Apology List. I write down some players that I bashed and I made fun of at some point during the season or before the season, and I give them an apology if they overperformed my expectations.
Okay.
So we're going to do Bengals Chiefs next. We're going to do Reds Apologies fourth, and then after that, we're just going to make a nonsense of this show. So thank you for listening on the radio, ESPN 1410. You've got a good one ahead of you. Nonetheless, Bengals Chiefs coming up next.
The NFL's biggest rivalry, probably, right? We can say that.
Yeah, I'll say it.
NFL's biggest rivalry.
If you want to say it, I want to say it.
Bengals and Chiefs. I'm in. It doesn't get much bigger than this in week 2, and Jamar Chase said the exact same thing. He said if you need any more energy for a game like this against the Chiefs in Arrowhead, then you're playing the wrong sport, you're in the wrong situation. So it's nice to see that the team is not as down and in the dumps as a lot of the fans are. That was my main takeaway from the press conferences and practice clips of the last few days, is that a lot of fans have thrown in the towel on this season, not from we're going to be picking number 1 in the draft type of thing, but just the whole dream of a Super Bowl, of a 1 seed, of dominance, of being a wire-to-wire number 1 good team in the league. That's gone out the window, and fans have given up on it. But the players haven't. They still believe. Jamar said they're the team to beat in the AFC, no question about it. And, well, I don't know if I would necessarily go that far and agree with him. I think the 2-time Super Bowl champs are still probably the team to beat. But I love the mindset, and I love how the guys are going to go out there and attack it. My question at this point is, outside of Joe and Jamar, because we know that they're the big question marks. If Jamar Chase is going to go 6 catches for 62 yards with nothing downfield, the Bengals aren't going to win this game. Outside of those two, who are the guys that you need to see contribute a little bit more than we saw last weekend? Both sides of the ball, anyone you want to pick.
Yeah,
to be confident in beating the Chiefs this weekend.
I'm gonna say it's gonna be, and maybe this is a sleeper pick, but I'm gonna go with Zach Moss.
Love it.
They have to run the football. They have to, and I'm looking at these box scores. So they lost to the Chiefs last season, as we know. Jake Browning was the quarterback. They were in the game. They were winning the game. They lost at 25-17 in Kansas City. Jake Browning, 19 for 33, 197 yards and a touchdown. But I'd argue they only lost that game because eventually in the fourth quarter it had to become the Jake Browning game.
Right.
And it had to be him elevating the offense, because for 3 quarters it was Joe Mixon. He had 21 carries, 65 yards in that game. Obviously not great production, and obviously when you go down, you can't run the ball anymore. But for 3 quarters the Bengals were winning that football game. And that's what I'd go back to. If you go back to the AFC Championship game from earlier in 2023, obviously in January, they didn't run the ball. So you had 8 carries from Mixon for 19 yards. You had 4 or 5 carries for Samaje Perine for 22 yards. And the leading rusher of that game was Joe Burrow, 4 carries for 30 yards. Run the football. If you're able to score early, then sit on it and run. I know that's not the Bengals offense exactly, but once you start running the football, eventually somebody's going to be open in the pass game. The play action starts to work. Somebody's going to be open downfield. So that's what I'd point to if I were the Bengals, and I'd focus on. It's also worth noting Joe Burrow didn't play great in the AFC Championship game, 26 for 41, 270, a touchdown, 2 picks. Jake Browning also didn't play great, 19 to 33, 197 yards. So if you're able to elevate through the air, then do it, but I don't think it's going to be an air raid game. I think it's going to be Bengals ground and pound, use Zach Moss, get Chase Brown involved. I think it's going to be that kind of game. The good news is the defense has shown up. 23 points in the AFC Championship game, obviously in January of 2023, and then December of 2023, 25 points. And the Chiefs scored, obviously, 9 in the fourth quarter, all field goals. I think that was – how many touchdowns did they score in that game last year? I think it was all field goals, right?
That I do not remember.
I'm going to look. Hold on. Everybody calm down.
While you're pulling that up, the one word that did pop up yesterday, because I absolutely agree that Zach Moss in the run game is going to be crucial if the Bengals want to beat the Chiefs. Zach Moss did pop up on the injury report yesterday for the first time. He's listed with a neck injury. He was a full participant in practice, so on track to play. Not a whole lot to worry about there in terms of him being out, but he did pop up on the injury report with a neck injury, and Logan Wilson did return to practice in the middle of that defense in a limited capacity, but still out there practicing for that Bengals defense. He was the PFF top-graded linebacker in Week 1, so big to have him back in the middle for this Week 2 matchup against the Chiefs.
It was 6 field goals.
Wow.
Harrison Butker kicked 6 field goals.
There you go, Everett.
That's the defense holding up. So if you're able to do that this year again, it comes down to can you run the ball effectively. They haven't been able to really do it the past two outings. So if you can run the ball effectively against the Kansas City Chiefs, I think Sweet Lou Anarumo is going to get the job done defensively. Outside of that, Jacob, I don't think Hollywood Brown is officially out, but it looks like he probably won't play based on everything that I've seen. Nonetheless, how scared are you of the Chiefs' new wide receiving room?
I'm with Cam Taylor-Britt. I'm with Cam Taylor-Britt on this one.
I like this.
Xavier Worthy can run fast. He can run in a straight line. That's all cute and dandy. But we're going to play a physical brand of defense. And
boy, it's going to suck if he just goes a straight route,
yeah, no,
4 verts, and he's wide open down there for a 75-yarder.
Because if you look at that streak touchdown he had last week against Marlon Humphrey, I don't think it's breaking news to play the 110-pound soaking wet wide receiver speed demon with press physical coverage. Marlon Humphrey simply missed on the jam, and then he's gone. So if you miss on Xavier Worthy, you are going to be in a lot of trouble. But if you're able to get your hands on him, we saw it all through training camp. We saw it all through the dual practices. He was getting thrown around like a rag doll. You can move him around. You can get him off his route, and you can dominate the game. He didn't have many touches last week, just 3 touches. Obviously, 2 of them touchdowns. Can't take anything away from him there.
Yep.
One was a gimmick jet sweep that he had the whole side of the field open, and the other was a blown coverage deep ball. Obviously, NFL touchdowns, they're impressive, but they're not all built the same. And 2 touchdowns in your rookie debut, no matter who you are, I get it. That's big news, especially when you're a big name like Xavier Worthy coming out of Texas, going to a perennial contender like the Chiefs. Everyone wants to focus on you, think you're going to be the Tyreek Hill replacement. I don't think he's that good. I think he's going to be a fine receiver. They have a very, very clear number 1 to me, and it's Rashee Rice. I don't think there's any question about it in my mind who their number 1 receiver is. It's Rashee Rice. He had over 100 yards against the Ravens. He had 75 of those yards from the slot, absolutely dominating from that inside-out role. And that's what I want the Bengals to do more with Jamar Chase. You don't see a lot of creativity from them, not a lot of moving them around. You see him stuck in one spot, lined up on the outside consistently. The great teams move their number 1 receivers around and get them in different positions to get open and hunt matchups. And that's what we're going to see from the Chiefs with both Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce. I know Travis Kelce is a tight end, but they hunt matchups. Andy Reid hunts matchups better than almost any coach in the history of the league. He'll move Travis Kelce around and find out exactly who they want him to be going against so that the Chiefs' offense can move the ball as prolifically as possible. But those offensive mismatches are not even the biggest ones on my mind. Maybe the best defensive player in the league, my pick for Defensive Player of the Year, Chris Jones, an absolutely dominant interior pass rusher that, like they do on offense, Steve Spagnuolo will move around to hunt for the best matchups, and we certainly have a gaping hole when it comes to those matchups in Trent Brown on the right side. Just a PFF grade just above 45. Last week, he allowed a sack and contributed to over half of the pressures Joe Burrow faced. Meanwhile, Chris Jones had a very similar stat line, 3 pressures and a sack for him as well. You combine those 2 together, and it's not a pretty sight for the Bengals. We saw Joe Burrow be really worried, seemingly in the pocket, moving up in clean pockets, throwing the ball early, checking down before he needed to. Uncharacteristic of the Joe Burrow that we extended and of the Joe Burrow that led this team to the Super Bowl. If Chris Jones messes up that pocket early, can get a hit I'm reading the chat now, get a hit on Joe Burrow, get in his head and disrupt the rhythm of the offense, of the Bengals offense, I'm really worried about how this game could go, because we saw from Joe Burrow that if the pocket is clean and everything is going well, he's still not quite at 100 miles per hour yet. If it unravels early, I think it could get really ugly. A lot of weight on our offensive line's shoulders to play well. They played well last week outside of Trent Brown. We're going to need him to step it up as well as the other 4 to continue to play well.
I know teams don't just chuck it just to chuck it, but I saw it a little bit on the Patriots, I think one time towards the end of the game there. You throw it deep, and there's still the chance of pass interference to be called in the NFL so frequently as it is.
Yeah.
Why? I mean, I know you can't plan to just throw balls downfield and pray for pass
Philip
interference.
Rivers built a career off it.
But it's like, I feel like if you threw the ball downfield, even if it's not necessarily a great throw, there's still, like, I mean, overthrow them, yada yada, throw it a little bit out of bounds.
You underthrow him by like 5 yards, have him work back to it through the DB. It's a flag every time.
I just feel like that gives you more opportunity. Not to mention we have a talented wide receiver room. But you did mention Rashee Rice. Rashee Rice 5 for 127 against the Bengals last December. Noticeably, though, Travis Kelce held in check, three catches for 16 yards.
And he did not have a good week 1 either.
Yeah, so I think maybe they start to shift away from Travis Kelce. At least Lou has kind of held him in check the past couple of times. Isaiah Pacheco caught 7 balls for 35 yards and a touchdown.
If you know anything about Isaiah Pacheco, you know that he runs like an angry hamster.
He does.
Just pounds the ground with his legs. And if you watch the Bengals this Sunday against the Patriots, that is the exact type of runner that should scare you to death. Because the Bengals missed 14 tackles this past weekend against Ramondre Stevenson. And Pacheco was one of the best broken tackle running backs in the entire league.
He averaged 7 yards a carry their last performance, 18 for 130. 18 for 130 against the Cincinnati Bengals. Yeah, I don't know. It's going to come down to if the Chiefs score first, the Bengals have to be able to answer, or else it's going to be my game plan, which is they're just going to use Pacheco and just run the ball, run out the clock as much as they can, and I don't want that to happen. Hopefully, you're going to see – you know what I want? Last year, I think they did it at some point. If they win the kickoff or if they win the coin toss, elect to go get the ball first. Go down and score. Go prove that your offense is worth a damn. Because it is. This offense is very, very good. And the fact that last week you play one of the worst teams in the league and they look, quite frankly, scared. They look scared. They played scared. You can't play scared against the 2-time back-to-back Super Bowl champs and the Kansas City Chiefs. Can't do it. So go out there, get the ball, and go down and march down and score. I forget who they did that against last year. Maybe it was the Bills. I don't know. There was just a portion during last season when the offense, again, starts out slow, and then this kind of gives you a little bit of boost, a little bit of energy. That's what I'd want to see from the Bengals against the Chiefs. Again, I heard your take on Dialed In with Tom and Luke. It's going to be about not looking defeated, not looking like you're not there. The Bengals looked like they weren't there. They weren't present during that Patriots game. Show up, score 24 points. If you lose the game 27-24, I'll count it as a win. That's a moral victory in my book. I'm not asking for a lot here. I'm just asking for the offense to show up. If the defense gets torched, I hate to say it, but that's what I expect from our defense. I think they've improved a little bit, but at the end of the day, when the Patriots can control the entire clock against you, I'm not going to say that the defense played great. Mind you, that our defense is the kings of keeping everybody to field goals. We let you down inside the 30, but outside of that, no touchdowns. So that's the one positive. So maybe Butker is the leading scorer again for Kansas City. But nonetheless, that's what I want to see. I want to see the Bengals offense show up, play with some confidence, see Joe Burrow throw the ball downfield a couple times. Not once, not twice. Do it. Just keep doing it. And maybe they'll throw pass interference. Open up the playbook a little bit. Let me see Jamar Chase make himself what he has been the past couple of years now. He's an electric deep threat. Go down and use him like that. You have guys that you can use as well. I know we might not have T. Higgins, but at the end of the day, I do think there's enough options there. I think Mike Gesicki. Throw more to Mike Gesicki. I think he had 3 catches against the Patriots. Go use Mike Gesicki.
Who dominated the Chiefs in that Ravens game? We all watched it. It was the kickoff game. It was primetime television. Who dominated the Chiefs in that game? It was Isaiah Likely.
Yeah.
It was the tight end position. Nick Bolton had one of the worst PFF grades in the entire NFL in coverage. That's the Chiefs' middle linebacker. He was a borderline All-Pro a few years ago, but it's amazing how things can change in just 1 year, just 2 years. The Bengals have to use these tight ends to receive. Without T. Higgins on the outside, every single coverage damn near is going to be rolled towards number 1. They're not going to let Jamar Chase beat you, and that's what happens when you play a good team. Steve Spagnuolo might be the best defensive coordinator in the entire NFL. He's not just going to let Joe Burrow throw the ball to Jamar Chase, walk downfield, and score a touchdown. Tanner Hudson's been on the injury report all week, and I hope everything's okay long term. I think the Bengals could really benefit from him being out. He was used a ton last week and obviously fumbled at the goal line. to lose the game when you're looking at it big picture for the Bengals, but that's not even what I'm talking about. They used him a ton instead of Eric All, who was their draft pick that was supposed to be this really, really exciting receiving blocking threat. And when he did block, he had a great showing blocking last week against the Patriots. I would like to see him more in the receiving game. He's a dynamic player, and I think he brings so much more to the table than Hudson does. And Gesicki was a centimeter away from a touchdown. I don't know why you wouldn't continue to use him on third downs to convert short yardage, and in the red zone especially. That's where we need to dominate with Mike Gesicki. And I think until T. Higgins gets back, he should operate as the number 2 receiver.
Yeah.
I just don't know that I necessarily have the faith in Yoshivas and Charlie Jones to win on the outside consistently, at least. And I think that's what came up last night, and we talked about it on Chatterbox Bengals on Tuesday and Thursday. Joe Burrow, just when he drops back and it's a clean pocket, I'm not entirely sure that he had faith that those receivers not named Jamar Chase were going to win their routes on Sunday. If T. Higgins is lined up where Andre Yoshivas is on the last play of the game, I guess it wasn't the last play of the game, the Bengals' last play of the game, the 3rd and 10.
Yep.
Joe Burrow's probably uncorking that ball because he understands, okay, T. Higgins one-on-one, double move on the outside, he's going to win. When they took Jamar away, I don't know that Joe necessarily had faith in the other guys to anticipate them getting to the open windows. When you have T. Higgins and Jamar Chase out there, that's what you do. You throw to where they're going to be, not where they are. I just don't know that he had faith in those other receivers to get to where they're supposed to be, and that's where the run game comes in, because you don't have to throw into windows and stuff when you scheme good play action. You get guys running wide open. You get great windows. You get guys sitting down in zones, and that's why Zach Moss and Chase Brown are going to be absolutely crucial. Chase Brown, just 3 rushes last week is unacceptable. If he's not good enough to carry half of a backfield load, then it's malpractice that the Bengals didn't go out and sign another running back.
Yep.
You could not go into the season with just Zach Moss as a 20 to 30 carry a game guy. I know the Bengals didn't run the ball even 20 times as a team last week, but that's not consistent. That's because we were down early and we were trying to win the game. The Bengals obviously are not going to lead the league in rushing, but they're going to run the ball. Teams that win games run the ball because you have the lead and you have to ice it. And if you sign Zach Moss to be a featured number 1, no change of pace, no doubt about it, goal line, every 3rd down, everything running back, then I think you made a terrible decision. If you sign these 2 guys, I drafted Chase Brown, signed Zach Moss to pair them together and have a good thunder and lightning duo with change of pace and speed and power, that's a phenomenal backfield. And that's what I signed up for this year. That's what I expected to see out of these 2 guys. And just 3 carries to Chase Brown. Not only is it not giving Chase Brown a chance to show you what he can do, but I think it's hurting Zach Moss's ability to thrive in his role, or at least the one he was intended to play.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about this a little bit more. Next segment, we're also going to do my Reds apologies. You will see and hear who I will have to apologize to coming up next. But nonetheless, Bengals Chiefs predictions right around the corner. ESPN 1410 Wing AM, presented by United Dairy Farmers. And welcome back in to Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Shout out to everybody watching right now on YouTube. Shout out to everybody listening right now on the radio. Bengals Chiefs in Burrowhead.
That's right.
In Burrowhead. Nonetheless, Jacob, what are your predictions? What do you think happens? Who wins this game and by how many points?
I'm going to say the Bengals win. I think
the
Bengals are certainly going to cover. I think the Bengals are going to cover for sure. Loved it when it was at 7. Love it slightly less now at 5.5, but I still love it. I think the Bengals are going to make it a very competitive game, and if you lose that Bengals spread pick, it's going to be by them ripping your heart out. So I think 5.5 taking the plus is the way to go here. These teams just don't play games that have big scores, big lopsided scores at the end. These are all one-score games over the last however many years with Burrow and Mahomes both out there, and I think it's going to be more of the same this weekend. I'm not nearly as confident as the Bengals winning the game as I am on them covering. I do think they're going to look a lot better, but even if you give your A game, I think it's going to require a Chiefs B-plus game in order to win. If both teams are on, I think the Chiefs are going to take it home. Hopefully the Bengals can have some good schemes, get creative, and make it all work and get out of there with a win. But I'm not as optimistic there. I definitely think they're going to cover, though. And the chat's saying I sound scared. Oh, boy, I do. I am scared because 0-2, I said all offseason that I didn't care about a slow start. I wasn't going to freak out if we started 0-2. Starting 0-2 would freak me out.
I know you shouldn't look into betting trends as reasons as to why you want a team to win, but nonetheless, Vegas says that there's a lot of money coming in on Kansas City right now at -5.5. That means it's very good that the Bengals cover, which gives the Bengals a better chance to obviously then win the game, cover 5.5 points. We'll talk about the spread in the last two segments, but nonetheless, I do think the Bengals win this game, and I think they win it not just because I think we're the kryptonite to the Chiefs, but I think they're going to win it because usually when the Bengals when there's this perception the Bengals offense is gone like it was last year, the perception that Joe Burrow's not playing well like it happened last year, usually right around that time, the Bengals offense and Joe Burrow kick it in gear. So I think they're going to be alive, they're going to be awake, they're going to be present, and I really do think it'll be a start-to-finish victory for the Cincinnati Bengals. I think it'll be close. I think it'll be decently high scoring. I think you're going to probably see around the same score that you've seen the past 4 times. It's going to be probably like 28-24, something around there.
I do not think the Bengals win if it goes over.
Really?
I think if the Bengals are going to win, it has to go under.
That's fair. That's more than fair. So I'm going to predict the Bengals win this game. I think the Bengals win it 27-24. I think they win it by a field goal. I think Evan McPherson kicks a game winner at the buzzer. And that's how the Bengals will beat the Chiefs in 1-1. Again, Jacob said it on Dialed In. I don't care how they get to 4-2 after the first 6 games.
Yeah.
I don't care at all. Just be 4-2. If one of those wins is the Chiefs and one of those losses is the Patriots, fine, we've switched. I don't really care. Doesn't matter who you beat, just matters that you beat them. And that's what the Bengals have to do on Sunday at, I think, 4:25 is the start.
4:25, that's
4:25 is the start.
Pseudo primetime game.
Pseudo primetime game. Was that Romo? Is Romo calling this
I
one?
believe so.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
Yeah, it'll be fun. If you don't want to listen to him, listen to me. I'll be live streaming
That's right.
the game.
Don't listen to Romo when you can listen to Jacob.
Don't have your eardrums bleed with that nonsense. He'll be praising Mahomes the whole time. I'll be equally as biased, but it'll be for your team.
That's right.
So it's more fun.
Nonetheless, so now what we're going to do right now, Jacob, I'm going to have you buy me 3 seconds.
Oh.
So
I'm really good at buying seconds, and that's what I'm doing right now.
You did it.
I think
you
that's
did it.
been
He
3
did it.
segments.
He bought them. Reds apologies. Now, as everybody knows, I'm a negative fan. I'm a pessimist. I don't believe the Reds will ever win a World Series. I just come into these seasons, and I just hope they're competitive. This season, unfortunately, they weren't competitive. They were pretty much bad from the beginning of the year to now. Starting pitching did great. They pitched incredibly well up until the point where we didn't have any left. But nonetheless, you have to look at the starting pitching and say they absolutely overperformed, exceeded any expectation you could have. And I would say that none of us really had a doubt about that. I think Frankie Montas was the one question mark, and he was serviceable. He was an innings eater, and he wasn't. I think he got hurt one time. Maybe it was the first or second start. I forget which one Frankie Montas went down with an injury. But that was really the only time he was hurt, and for the majority of the season, they were healthy. Graham Ashcraft pitched bad. He went on the IL, but the Reds fought through that. Nonetheless, bullpen, relievers. I came into this season with the same expectation of last year. I don't really believe in anybody, but yet here we are on September 13th, and they've done well. Of course, again, these all have a little bit of asterisks because the bullpens now had to become starting pitching, and that's all skewed the numbers. But nonetheless, for the majority of the season when we still had a mostly healthy team, the bullpen pitched great. Then you look at the offense. Offense wasn't it. The offense didn't figure it out at all this season. We're here at September 13th, and they still haven't figured it out. They don't score runs. They can't put together at-bats. They don't have long at-bats. They're not getting on base enough. And here we are, and it's just been a lost season. So, but nonetheless, through all of it, through thick and thin, I still love my Cincinnati Reds. And these next few names are guys that I had major doubts coming into this season, major doubts during the middle of this season, and that on September 13th, of course, they have exceeded my expectations and my doubts. So first, Tyler Stevenson. This is where Jimmy Fallon would do some sort of sad music behind me. We're not Jimmy Fallon, though.
I'm certainly not.
Yeah, correct. Tyler Stevenson. I thought you were going to be a double play machine. I thought you were going to be a liability at the catcher position, but you weren't that. You helped pave the way to one of the more successful starting pitching seasons I've ever seen. A 258 average with a 335 OBP and a 787 OPS. You were just what this team needed this season, and hopefully you are here for a long time. Tyler Stevenson, I apologize to you. You are a Cincinnati Red, hopefully for the next 10 years. In all seriousness, though, he's been great. I still didn't get that word out right. Seriousness. All seriousness.
You got it.
All seriousness. I can't say it. Too many S's. Tyler Stevenson, thank you very much. You've been admirable. I know the backup catching position hasn't been there all season long, but you've carried the load for the rest of us. Thank you very much. Next up, Santiago Espinal. This one's for Randy. Randy knows who he is, and if he's listening, he knows that I'm going to do this. I used to say that you were the best sub-200 hitter in the universe, but now you actually hit above 200, so that joke's not valid. You have played far more games than you probably should have, and in doing so have helped this team out tremendously by becoming one of the most trustworthy batters in our lineup. 12 doubles, 9 home runs, 45 runs batted in roughly 100 games. You've been absolutely incredible, Santiago Espinal. We thank you. You are currently hitting .266. If you would have told me back in May when you were hitting $150 that you would be hitting .270 at one point, I would have laughed at your face. But thank you, Santiago Espinal. You're a great role player, and hopefully you will be back next season as well. Santiago Espinal, I apologize. Ty France. When the Reds made this move, I said this would be a fun DFA in August. I was wrong. Not only are you still on this roster, Ty France, but you are one of the best players offensively that we have. In merely 38 games, you have 12 extra base hits, 14 runs batted in, while rocking a slash line of .292, .338, .784. Maybe you will be back next season. Who's to say? Not me. I don't know. But Ty France, thank you very much for your service. And I love you. Kinda. Buck Farmer. What can I say, Buck? Every season I see your name, and I think to myself that this is an unserious pitcher. Buck Farmer. It's kind of a silly name. Yet somehow, every season you dominate, Buck. In 54 games, you're rocking a 3.05 ERA and have been one of the most reliable relievers we have. Thank you, Buck. I'd like to see you back on the Reds forever. Not on a long-term deal. I'd like them to be one-year deals in perpetuity forever. Just one-year deals for Buck Farmer until the sun burns out. Thank you, Buck. I apologize for having doubts. May God bless you. Jonathan India. I'd like to apologize, not for me on this one, but for the entire Reds fan base. They all doubted you. They all wanted you gone. Yet somehow, if you were gone, you wouldn't have been able to be the most important player you were this season. When everyone was down and with injury, you were the only one who remained, Jonathan. You stood tall and had the best month I've ever seen. That month carried you up until this point because you haven't really been very good after that. But nonetheless,
204 in his last 30 games.
Well, that's a bad month. You should have looked at his good month because when he was good during that 1 month, he was the best good player during that month that I've ever seen. So, Jonathan India, I apologize for Reds fan base. Again, not for me because I never doubted you. I just wish you'd be better at least over the past 30 games because you've been pretty bad lately. But nonetheless, Jonathan, we, not me, they apologize. Nick Martinez. I thought this was a classic Reds signing. You get all kinds of value by making a reliever start games for you because you don't have the money to sign actual starting pitching. I thought it was going to be one of those nonsense Luis Sessa things. But nonetheless, even though you've become a starting pitcher, you've become a great starting pitcher. Multiple performances of 7-inning, 1-run baseball, 122 innings on the year, a 3.4 ERA while having to start and come in long relief. Thank you, Nick. And hopefully we can figure something out, and you will be back with the Cincinnati Reds next season. I don't know how long you'll be here in Cincinnati, but I love you, Nick Martinez. That was a very good signing by Nick Krall. #GetCrawled. I apologize for doubting you. Stuart Fairchild. Sweet, sweet Stu. I've never believed in you. As a fielder, as a batter, I've always had doubts, and I've said you were an unserious baseball player many times. Yet somehow you've become a staple of this team. You can't hit any right-handed pitching that comes your way, but if it's a lefty, I know you're going to go home run. You're going to go yard, over the fence, to the moon. That's what you are, Stuart. You're a serviceable fielder outside of those 2 times when you didn't really throw the ball in when there was a runner on third and 1 out. Outside of that error you had in Chicago when I was there. Outside of those 2 noticeable plays, you've been a serviceable fielder, and you've been just what we've needed as a backup outfielder. Thank you, Stuart Fairchild, and hopefully you will be back next season. I apologize. You are more than deserving to have a spot on this roster. Stuart Fairchild, I, Elliot Rearing, apologize to you. I don't like the TikToks, though. I wish the TikToks would stop.
But you don't know they're him.
You don't know they're him. Well, he was in a couple of them, though.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, he was in a couple of them.
That's a shame.
Final one. The final apology. Ellie De La Cruz. You had the 3-error game in Philadelphia in week 2. I freaked out. I said, how is this acceptable? I said, you should be benched. You shouldn't be playing anymore. But nonetheless, Ellie, you're still here. And you're playing at an MVP caliber level. There are people who have kept receipts from when I texted and freaked out about you during that Philadelphia series. And they have threatened to use them against me many times. Many times. Anytime I say anything bad, they just say, Elliot, do you want me to release the texts? Please don't release those texts. Nobody needs to see them. Ellie, I doubted you, and I apologize. You are an MVP. Hopefully the Reds sign the largest contract in franchise history, and they make you a Red for life. I want it to happen soon. You might have 70 stolen bases on the year. I apologize for doubting you, Ellie. And again, shout out to you because you're incredible. That's it. Those are the Reds' apologies. Every year I have to do that because every once in a while I call these guys bums and losers. And that's not a personal thing. When you're a fan, you have to say that. Yeah. You have to say it.
No, you don't.
It's just in the moment things. These players know that. I'm a stupid, dumb fan. And I have stupid, dumb reactions. So I get it all out of the way, and at the end of the year, I apologize to the ones that have outperformed. Now, for the ones that haven't overperformed, I will not apologize because, unfortunately, you've earned the name. But, nonetheless, those are my apologies. And that's it.
Yeah, I was looking through to try to add some apologies of my own to this segment, but every take I had about the Reds this year was exactly right. So I don't have any.
Yeah, how about that? Reds play again, Minnesota. Shout out to the Twins because they're going to sweep the Reds here in this series.
Don't you have them to win that division?
Huh?
Don't you have them to win that
division? No, I have the Royals.
Yeah.
Need the Royals. That's why I know they're going to sweep the series.
Okay.
I'm looking at the chat right now. Anything relevant? No.
They want us to talk about FCC.
Okay, sure.
Okay,
hold on.
I can do
it.
Soccer team that played here.
Hold on, I can do that. FC Cincinnati score.
I'm trying to.
So it looks like
they played a game at TQL Stadium.
Yeah, it looks like they played Columbus.
They played the Hell is Real game.
Oh. Hell is real.
They won or lost or drawed that.
Hell is real if I had to sit down and watch that 7:30 on a Saturday night.
Heyo.
But nonetheless, thank you for FC Cincinnati's effort. They are admirable.
They did win? Did not win.
What do you mean?
Did they win the game?
Win the game. Do they win the game? Or did they?
Oh, is it coming up?
No, it's tomorrow.
Oh, I thought it already happened.
No.
Oh, well, look at that. Maybe I'll go.
Yeah, Hell is real. You're going to go?
Maybe I'm going to go.
Please go.
Well, I'll tell you this right now.
Please go.
I always watch the games if they're on.
That's what I do, too.
Right.
And here's the thing about it. Not a lot of people have Apple TV Plus,
No.
the soccer edition. That's it. Reds apologies. We have 2 more segments to go on this beautiful program. Thank you for being here with us and putting up with our stupidity on this beautiful Friday show. Kinner is not here. Shout out to Justin Kinner for not being here. And then that's it. ESPN 1410 Wing AM. We'll be right back with you. Every once in a while I forget the tagline there. We'll be right back with you.
Whoa! It scared me. Didn't expect to see you there.
Really?
Yeah, it's shocking. Anyways, we're here for ads. Got to pay the bills since Casey wants to quiet quit and not be a part of the team anymore. We got to pick up the slack, right, Elliot?
That's right.
And we're out here again, and I got up.
You're getting better as this week has gone on. You've gotten a lot better at this.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
A lot better.
I'm trying.
Yeah.
I'm trying. And I had to wake up early this morning to produce Dialed In. It was the thrill of a lifetime, and I just knew I was going to be parked by 11:04.
Yeah.
And the great thing about that is we always have Pawnee water in the office. And Pawnee water is the greatest tasting water of all time. The natural limestone filtration is second to none. It's brewed right here. It's bottled right here in Hamilton, Ohio, right across from our wonderful studios. We know the Pawnee guys well. They're great guys. And speaking of, we need more Pawnee. We're running low on Pawnee here.
Every once in a while, it's like every 4 months, they bring us one case, and we go through that case in 3 days.
Yeah.
I go through 3 bottles a day. Jacob goes through 3 bottles a day. Casey, I think, goes through 10 bottles a day.
But you know what's
I actually think Casey takes them home. That's where I think
Okay,
they go.
okay.
I actually think he takes them home to Alex. I think he takes like a bag, a sack full of them.
There's a bunch of great tasting water in a case of Pawnee water. You know what there's none of?
Rocks?
No rocks.
That's right.
Not a single rock in the best tasting water this side of the Mississippi or that side of the Mississippi, quite frankly.
Any side of the Mississippi.
Any side of the Mississippi you are on, look for Pawnee water because it's the best water you can find. That's pawneewater.com.
.com.
So you'll get yours today.
Is it available everywhere?
Online it is.
Is it online?
I had a case shipped to Alabama when I was going to
Okay,
school
all
down
right,
there.
then it is. Go online.
You can buy it anywhere.
That's right.
On pawneewater.com. The Bengals Report is proudly sponsored by Encore Technologies. At Encore Technologies, we deliver cutting-edge IT solutions for a data-driven world, from mobile computing and desktop support to advanced data center solutions. We help build, enhance efficiency, and
PRODUCTIVITY. PRODUCTIVITY. Did it twice.
thanks, Eliaru.
You're
That's
welcome.
productivity if you can't spell. Visit encore.tech where your path to innovation begins.
Where?
It feels good again to say it begins
Right
right here
there.
in the spot where it actually
Right
does begin.
there.
Right here in this chair is where it begins, or wherever you are. Listening to Off the Bench,
That's
it
correct.
begins right here with us, Encore Technologies. Any productivity and efficiency needs.
That's right. I've had a lot of inefficiency needs in my life. So when I
Is that
have
true?
that, I just go to Encore. Thank you very much, Encore.
That's right, because they have the solutions.
They do.
No. Ticket buying has never been easier than with Game Time. Game Time is the best ticket buying app. It's the only app that we use. I love going to live events. Doing the Bengals stream has cut into the amount of Bengals games I'm able to go to. So I've been looking at Ohio State tickets. I'm going to try to use Game Time to get up to Columbus, get to the Shoe, watch the Buckeyes play a couple games this year. And those tickets are cheaper than they are anywhere else. And that's with no fees, all upfront pricing. They make getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. The Game Time picks filters out the fluff to show you the incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. The super deals are incredible, and all the different tiers of deals show you exactly what kind of deal you are getting, whether you're getting the best bang for your buck or whether you should wait and try to find something else. There's nothing hidden about Game Time. They're all up front with you. You can customize your spot and use the supplemental instructions to find out exactly where you want to sit in the stadium with a 360-degree view from your seat. It doesn't get better than Game Time. The all-in pricing, the seat views, the lowest price guarantee. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code OTB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code OTB for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it?
Game time.
What
Who?
time is it?
Game time. Who?
What time is it?
Game time.
What
Who?
time is it?
Game time.
What
Who?
time is it?
That's too many.
All right, it's game time, folks. Thank you so much for using Game Time to get all your tickets. And no other housekeeping except for we all hate Tony Romo. I know I hate Tony Romo. He's incredibly annoying to listen to. Call a Chiefs game, and if you're in that same boat, get a second TV. Pull up that laptop.
That's right.
Get old Jacob on your screen, because I'll be streaming the Chiefs-Bengals game live from kickoff till final whistle on YouTube, on the Chatterbox Sports YouTube. So come join me in the chat. I'll answer your questions, whatever else. Have a good time, and then stick around as Craig Sandlin will join me for an immediate post-game show where we'll recap, hopefully, a Bengals win. Week 1 didn't go as planned, but if we can get a win, I think those post-game shows are going to be even more fun. So make sure to tune in for that. Ellie Rue,
Let me ask
anything
you.
else?
No, just like the stream. Just be.
That's right.
And let's set a record for most views for this Chatterbox Bengals on Sunday with
That'd be fun.
Jacob and Craig.
That'd be
I
fun.
want 5 million people watching. I don't think that's too much to ask.
I don't think so either.
So let's see everybody there. I do have one thing. We'll ask the chat. Should I go see Kings of Leon on Saturday or tomorrow?
Ooh.
I like Kings of
Where?
Leon.
How far?
It's at Brady.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah,
Now here's the
absolutely.
pros. I like Kings of Leon.
I do too.
Hashtag sex on fire.
Great song.
Cons, tickets are $220.
No. I like Kings of Leon too. Well, it depends on where you stand. Because,
Well,
I would not pay that to go see
it's-
Kings of Leon.
It's saying 126 is on the floor, but I don't know I've never been to Brady, so I don't know if the floor are good seats or not.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never been inside of Brady. I've only been on the outside.
Use somebody, Tyler. You should go see the Marley tour with me, Elliot. I don't know if I want to. I like Bob Marley, but I don't know if
It's spoiler alert. It's not Bob Marley.
Well, no, I know that it's his family, I think, but I'm not a. I looked at their set list, Mouse. I don't think they sing Three Little Birds.
That's crazy.
They don't sing Three Little Birds, Mouse Cop. If they don't sing three, if they don't sing,
says Floor's great.
If Floor is great, Everett, if you promise me, because I'm a short little guy now. So if I go and buy this and I'm behind some tall Paul Frischner type character, I'm gonna be pissed.
What if I just buy the ticket right in front of you on the floor?
That would be that would be unfortunate. Three Little Birds is overrated. What?
I think it's pretty proper.
Mouse Cop, you're a fake. Mouse Cop's a fake Bob Marley fan. Anything else in here before we go back to Radio World? Any other thing?
I don't think so.
Oh, we're gonna do a box lunch. We'll do a shorter box lunch today, sometime after.
I have the stream should be. I think it's private right now, but as soon as we get off of here and I send the radio stuff to Kenner, we'll switch over to there for a brief minute. It's gonna be a little shorter.
It'll probably just be a gambling show, if I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm gonna go over my picks. But nonetheless, that's it. So everybody, unless you have questions here, that's what we're gonna do. No questions. That's it. We're going back to Radio World. Seconds of silence coming up. Welcome back. Elliot, Jacob, Off the Bench, Chatterbox Sports, ESPN 1410, Wing AM, WING. Welcome in. Listen, these next two segments, if you thought our show was good today, I feel bad for you, but you're going to feel really bad in the next couple of segments because we got nothing. But here's the good thing about having nothing. I'm going to ask Jacob some questions, and then he's just going to give me some answers back.
I think that's a good plan.
So here's what we're going to do. We always do it in my fantasy league where and maybe this is just crazy nonsense from our league, but how I do every week when you're in a league with your friends for 11 years, we do secret little traditions. One is we have some guy give the game of the week. We have a game of the week.
Nice.
We have a player of the week prediction.
Love that.
We also have matchup predictions, and these matchup predictions aren't just normal matchup predictions. They're legitimately, I want to say, a page long, and I spend hours typing them every week.
That's awesome.
Hours. They're supposed to be very, very funny. It's a very long, funny thing. But nonetheless, this week, not fantasy related, in the NFL, do you have a matchup of the week? Do you have a game of the century that you're going to be locked in? Obviously, you're going to be locked in on the Bengals game. But if you didn't use that one, and I'll give you the out of using that one if you want to.
No, I won't take the easy way out.
Because I think I've got one too. But you can go ahead first if you got one.
I'm going to make sure I'm not missing anything. But I think sneaky, the best game of this week could be Tampa-Detroit. I think that Tampa-Detroit game
I like
is going
that.
to be electric.
I like that a lot.
What we saw from Baker this past weekend with the new offense, there's a lot of worries about whether he would still look good without Dave Canales there, the OC last year when he really broke out in Tampa Bay. And he looked phenomenal. He might have looked the best of any quarterback in week one. And Detroit, a 7.5-point favorite. I think that number's way too high.
Yep.
I'm going to be in on the Buccaneers for sure. I think the Lions are a very, very good team. Don't get me wrong, but I think people are overlooking the Bucs, and that's from a guy who overlooked the Bucs going into the season. I said the Falcons were going to waltz to the NFC South Championship, and I couldn't disagree more with August Jacob right now because I think the Buccaneers are as good, if not better, than the Falcons. But the Falcons play a very interesting game this weekend as well against the Eagles on Monday Night Football in Philadelphia. Eagles' first game in Philly yet this year, the home opener. And it's going to be really interesting to see how Kirk Cousins looked because in the game he looked scared. He looked uncomfortable with his new ankle. And in practice, it's been more of the same. The videos are not good when put side by side with what he was doing mechanically in Minnesota. It's completely different. He doesn't have any trust in that plant foot, and it's sliding out from under him on basically every downfield pass. He can't move on rollouts. And that Eagles D-line is nothing to joke about. Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, they were obviously dogs at Georgia, and now they're tearing it up in the NFL. I'm worried about that Falcons team getting embarrassed for a second game in a row against the Eagles. But I think the best matchup is Bucs-Lions, in my opinion. Obviously, avoiding Bengals-Chiefs.
Yeah. I think I'm going to go mine here, and maybe it's not the best pick. because I don't think any of these teams will be competing for a Super Bowl. But I do think the Cardinals-Rams game will be a really, really good game. I think you have Kyler Murray. Didn't have a great performance against the Bills, but 21 for 31, 162 yards, a touchdown, as well as adding 57 rushing yards. You're playing a Rams team, which I think's offense, as long as Matthew Stafford's healthy and available, I think they're going to be competitive no matter what. Cooper Kupp's back, 34 for 49, 317 yards, a touchdown, and he did have that terrible interception. We didn't talk about that either. There was some camouflage at play on that interception. But nonetheless, Matthew Stafford versus Kyler Murray. I believe this game is in Arizona. If I'm not, I think I'm definitely correct on that. Kyron Williams, again, not a great performance against the Lions. James Conner is a guy that once he left the Steelers, I thought would be a backup, not a great viable running back in the NFL. He's been pretty damn efficient in Arizona, and not to mention just not the rush game, but the passing game as well. He's been incredible. Receiving wise, three catches for 33 yards on Sunday against the Bills.
And they have Trey Benson behind him, who we haven't seen yet, but was a very exciting running back at Florida State.
I think that's going to be a shootout. I'm going to predict right now a team gets in the 40s in that one. I'm going to say 41-32 is the final score of that game. I think it's going to be a fun game, a shootout. I'm going to predict the Rams to win this. I think the Rams are a better team all around. I think the Cardinals are going to be fun to watch this year just because I think Kyler Murray is better than what people think. And I'm going to take the Rams. So I think that game's going to be very, very good.
The Cardinals were favored in that.
Yeah.
Shocked.
I think it's the home field gives you 3 points, right? Or 2.5 points.
I think that's what they say.
But nonetheless, let's pick some other games. So we will go through. I don't think we have the graphics, so I'm just going to read them out to you.
Well, if you can read them in a relatively slow manner, we could hypothetically have the graphic.
I don't think we need the graphics.
Okay.
49ers at Vikings. 5.5 is the spread.
49ers at Vikings. I mean, you could not have went in a more preposterous order here. But looking in the middle of the slate right now.
That's a 1 o'clock game.
At 49ers.
That's a 1 o'clock game.
It's in the middle of the 1 o'clock game.
What do you mean it's in the middle of the 1 o'clock games? They all start at 1 o'clock.
ESPN has them listed in a certain order.
All right, let me go to the ESPN order.
No.
No, I'm going to the ESPN order.
San Francisco at Minnesota. You're not going to like my pick. Are we picking these against the spreads, or are we picking these straight up?
Spreads.
Against the spreads, Vikings are 5-point underdogs, and I am picking the Vikings. I think Sam Darnold is taking that vaunted 7th-year jump. He looked incredible in Week 1, and I think he's going to continue to look really good. Everyone points to Sam Darnold as, hey, we've seen this guy not play at a high level for a long time. He's just going to be bad. Okay, what happened to Baker in Tampa? What happened to Geno in Seattle? This is a thing that's happening a lot more often now, where quarterbacks are getting revived in a new system with a younger offensive coordinator, a more experimental system where they can really let their skills thrive. And you can say whatever you want about Sam Darnold, the NFL quarterback, and I won't argue you on a lot of it, but that arm talent is incredible, and he still has it. And as long as he's thrown to the right team, which has been an issue his entire career, he's going to be fine. And I think the Vikings are going to be a pretty decent football team. I think they're going to cover the 5 and maybe even win that game against the Niners. I think the Vikings are going to be an interesting team to watch this year because I just don't think Darnold is that bad.
If the spread was 4.5, and maybe this is just the gambler in me, I would have taken the Vikings. 5.5 gives me a little bit of wiggle room where I think there's enough confidence in the 49ers to win this game. I think it's close. I think it is a trap game. Certainly coming off a big Monday night victory against the Jets. But I think the 49ers are going to win this game. I think they're going to cover the game as well. 5.5 points. I think they win the game by a touchdown. But in a probably closer game than people think, and maybe Minnesota is better than I think. Because I was out on Minnesota coming into this season. I thought there was going to be probably 3 different quarterbacks playing the position over the course of this season. But nonetheless, close game, and we'll move on to Dallas versus New Orleans. New Orleans at Dallas. Spread 6.5.
This is a game that I think is a complete reaction to Week 1 when we talk about the spread.
Yeah.
The Saints looked incredible. They hung 47 on the Panthers in their Week 1 game. And Dallas, though they did handily beat the Browns, it was a defensive showcase, and Dak didn't wow anybody. So this spread being below a touchdown is mind-boggling to me. I'm going to take the Cowboys, and I'm going to take them for about as much as I can find. I think the Saints are one of the worst teams in the league. Last week changed nothing, in my opinion, there. And I think the Cowboys are very, very good. Obviously, we talk about Dak and Mike McCarthy and their inabilities to win in the playoffs, but checking my watch right now, it's still September. So
That's right.
I think they're going to be really good. Dak's going to put up numbers because he didn't in week 1, and we know how his numbers usually look a month or a month and a half or so into the season. He's usually on pace to break a whole bunch of records. So I think this is a week where he's going to thrive. Marshawn Lattimore was on the injury report for the Saints in practice this week. Obviously, at one point in time, he was one of the top corners in the entire league, getting a little older now, but without him out there, I don't know who's going to match up with CeeDee Lamb throughout that game. For the Saints, I think the Cowboys are gonna have a monster day offensively, and I think it's gonna come from CeeDee mostly in the slot because Paulson Adebo is certainly not an answer there.
Under Dennis Allen, the Saints are 4-10-1 against the spread after a win.
Wow.
That 28% cover percentage is the worst in the NFL since the start of 2022. I'm going to take the Cowboys. I'm going to take them alt line minus 17.5. That's how confident I am in the Dallas Cowboys this year. I think I might be in on the Cowboys. I
am all in.
I'm usually never bought in on them. I usually think they never figured it out. I don't know. You just paid Dak. You paid CeeDee. You got a great defense. I think the one knock against them is the running back room, I guess. But even then, I think that if you're going to air it out as much as they do, who cares? So I'm going to take the Cowboys to cover this 6.5. And they're gonna win that game by 100 points.
A fun Dennis Allen stat for you, and I don't know if you expected me to have a fun Dennis Allen stat
on my
sleeve, but I do. He's the second worst winning percentage of any NFL coach ever.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Who's first?
I think Hugh Jackson.
Oh, that's our guy. All right, so yeah, I love my pick. I think Cowboys minus 6.5 is the play. Maybe because I'm so confident on it, you should take the Saints. But nonetheless, you gave it as your pick of the game. It's Tampa Bay, Detroit. That spread's 7.5 in favor of the Lions. I'm going to take the Bucs here. I think it's another shootout. I think it's a close game. I think Baker's going to cover the 7.5. I'll take the easy way out and say the Lions win 37-30. They get the win, or the Bucs get the win by the hook. But nonetheless, I don't know. There's something about the Bucs now that after watching Week 1, and maybe again overreaction, but the Lions defense did get torched a little bit, and I think you have a Bucs offense that has so many good skill position players that it's crazy. I'm going to take them to cover the point spread. I don't think they're going to win the game. It's going to be close, but nonetheless, I think Baker puts on a show.
Yeah, I'm taking the Bucs as well. One of the main concerns with them, we knew what Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are able to do. Jalen McMillan looked great in the slot in Week 1, and we hoped Baker was going to look the same as he did last year. And that all seemed to have come to fruition in Week 1. And the worry was, okay, you have Rachaad White in the backfield. Is he going to be able to withstand 20, 25, 30 carries a game? Because you don't really have a second running back. Well, it certainly looks like Bucky Irving is a capable running back.
Yep.
The rookie out of Oregon. He's looked exciting so far. He's taking a little bit of the weight off of Rachaad White's shoulders in early down situations, and he's looked really good doing it. So I have a lot of faith in the Buccaneers, and I think they're a good team this year. I think they're a team that a lot of people were looking over, myself included, and I think they're really, really solid in most aspects of the game. And like I've said with the Falcons all season, playing in the NFC South, if you're even a decent team, there's a lot of wins for the taking right there.
Yep.
So they're a team that I would watch out potentially getting in that higher seed. I'm not going to say 1 seed, but higher seed in the NFC. If they can rip off 1 or 2 more surprising wins, because I think to get the 1 seed in the NFC, you're going to need 12 wins, and maybe they have 5 or 6 in their division.
Yeah.
So I think the Bucs are a team that we're going to want to keep an eye on the entire season.
You have the Colts going to Green Bay. That's a 2.5-point spread in favor of the Colts because obviously we don't know the quarterback situation fully in Green Bay. We're 100%. I think
How do we not know?
Well, it just they haven't closed the door yet, right?
I wasn't saying
they haven't closed the door yet, and I'm not going to say he's going to play. But if Jordan Love plays, and you bet right now that as 2.5-point dogs, I think that's good value. But nonetheless, he probably won't play.
If he plays, I'm going to gamble irresponsibly on the Packers.
I like that.
Because if he's in there, they have to win. The mojo would be too high.
I'm going to take the Colts, though, as of right now. If Jordan Love doesn't play, I think the Colts are a better team. I think that they have a better running back. I think the quarterback in Anthony Richardson's better, not just because of what he can do on the ground, which is incredible, but you saw that absolutely incredible. Like he slipped off the front foot, launches a 75-yard throw in the air to Alec Pierce last weekend. I'm going to take Anthony Richardson to win this game and cover the spread. I think it'll probably be close. I'm going to take him by a field goal, 24-21.
I do not think this will be close if Love doesn't play.
Okay.
I think Malik Willis is, with all due respect, maybe one of the worst quarterbacks left in the NFL. I mean, he is horrendous.
Outside of Kinner's guy.
Malik Willis is what people talking down about Deshaun say Deshaun currently looks like.
Yeah.
He's really bad. Really bad. An exciting arm, a decent scrambler, but he got drafted off of putting up gaudy numbers at Liberty. And I think we're going to find out later in this college football season how I feel about Liberty, because their schedule is unbelievably easy year in and year out, and they consistently go 12-0 or 11-1 and then want the respect of the national rankings or the national media or whatever else. And Malik Willis got it. I mean, if you remember going into the draft, he was talked about being potentially a first-round pick.
Yeah.
He went in the second round to the Titans, but he was talked about very, very highly coming into that draft and never lived up to it at all. He was traded for a mid-round pick to the Packers to back up Jordan Love, and now in week 2, he's probably going to start. So I don't know what that Packers offense is going to look like. I'm avoiding everyone other than Josh Jacobs in fantasy this week. They're all on my bench. I'm not relying on Malik Willis to facilitate that ball around. But obviously without Jordan Love going on IR, I don't expect the Packers to make another quarterback move. But it was reported that they met with Ryan Tannehill.
Yeah.
Which I thought was interesting, and even more interesting after last night, because I think we all remember Ryan Tannehill was drafted originally to the Dolphins, played many years there as their starting quarterback, never really made that next step. He looked much better in Tennessee after he went there, but never really clicked in Miami. And then obviously after the events of last night and Skylar Thompson being the only quarterback on the roster, Ryan Tannehill seems to be at the top of the list for free agent quarterbacks right now. Have to wonder if a reunion could be in the mix with him in Miami.
Have the Bengals looked at him for a potential wide receiving job?
People forget.
I'd like that.
He was an A&M wide
Malik
receiver.
Willis played or started in those couple of games in 2022. Didn't really do anything last year. In 2022, he was 31 for 61, 50% completion percentage, for 276 yards, no touchdowns, and 3 interceptions.
I've noticed that you're a big completion percentage guy.
I am. I think if you complete 70% of your passes, I think you're a good quarterback.
like that.
I know there's different.
It's a refreshing way to look at quarter, because people don't usually bring that up.
I think it's I like it. I think if you look at Deshaun Watson, he completes 58% of his passes. He's not very good. I think guys who complete percentage or have a completion percentage at a higher rate than other quarterbacks, though some are skewed because they might be a Jake Browning check down quarterback. I think usually most of the time you're a better quarterback. So nonetheless, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to pick the rest of this NFL slate, and that'll be the show. Jacob and I have gotten through these 5 segments seamlessly.
This has been pretty good.
Pretty good. We're going to come right back. ESPN 1410, Wing AM, finishing off the rest of this NFL slate. Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome back. NFL picks. We're giving them out like candy today. So if you like gambling advice from bad gamblers, you got it right here.
We'll work a graphic out with these picks and get it posted on Twitter.
Sure.
This is going to be way too long of a clip.
Way too long. Jets at Tennessee. 3.5-point spread in favor of New York. I think this is a bounce-back performance from Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. I think the Jets are a damn good team. I know they didn't win the game or look particularly good in the second half against the 49ers, but I think that's still a good ball club, and I think you're going to go into Tennessee and open up a can of whoop ass. Can you say ass on the radio?
You're the guy we have to ask about that.
I think you can. I think you can say
I think you just can't call someone.
I think it's Kinner's fault. He's not here today.
That's right.
So New York wins this game. I'm going to say they win this, and it's not particularly close. I'm going to say 34-20. Final score. Jets win this easily.
I've seen a lot of people very sour on Aaron Rodgers after week 1. They say he didn't look good mobility. He only threw to one side of the field. A lot of valid questions, but I think either I had very different expectations coming into this year, or we watched 2 completely different games, because I left week 1 with the Jets being very confident in that offense, because my only thing I was worried about with Aaron Rodgers is, does he have the arm still?
Yeah.
Does he still have the zip on the football? And he absolutely did. The arm looked great. He made some phenomenal throws, especially early in the game. If you expected the 40-plus-year-old torn Achilles quarterback to come back and be as mobile as he was when he was 25, I don't know what to tell you. That was never going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's why the Jets invested in their offensive line, who did struggle with the 49ers pass rush, but so does everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm certainly not out on the Jets whatsoever. I think 3.5 is really, really low. Obviously, Will Levis struggled against a good Bears defense last week. Cost them the game multiple times. And I don't think it's going to be any different this week. The Jets defense is phenomenal. They have playmakers everywhere. Your guy, Sauce Gardner, got banged up in the game last week, but seemed to be okay. Came back into the game.
Yep.
Has been practicing this week. So good news for that Jets defense. I think they'll take care of this one easily. But while we're on the Jets, I don't think we brought it up after that game. The sleeves are ridiculous on those jerseys.
Oh, it's outrageous.
Unless you have like the really tight under the shoulder pad sleeves, those sleeves are insane. It's like prime Peyton Manning.
It's outrageous. I agree 1,000,000%. I remember what color are the jerseys they wore?
They were white with the green stripes.
It was a preposterous look, but nonetheless, good for the Jets. Marketing move there.
I do think those new jerseys are much better than the
You think they're better? I don't think they're better.
You don't think they're better than the old ones?
No.
I didn't like the triangle across the front. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Around the shoulders. I like plain jerseys. Maybe I'm boring.
Nonetheless, moving on here, we have another New York team, the Giants, taking on the I skipped one again. Giants versus the Commanders at Washington. Spreads -1.5 for Washington. I'm gonna take the Commanders. I liked what I saw out of Jaden Daniels. I think he'll be able to run all over the Giants. I think the Giants are truly putrid. They have nothing and nobody at all on that team. And honestly, I'd feel very, very bad if I was a Giants fan. But they won those 2 Super Bowls, so how bad can you really feel? Nonetheless, Commanders win this game. I'm going to say easily. I'm going to say they win this game in blowout fashion. I'm going to say 21-3, 24-3.
Yeah, I'm going with the Commanders as well. I think Jaden Daniels is very, very impressive. He's great. He's going to be a great NFL quarterback. He's exciting to watch. And the Giants suffered a massive, massive loss in practice yesterday. Granted, it was the Commanders' practice. Emmanuel Forbes got hurt. He won't be playing in this game. And Emmanuel Forbes, the Commanders' first-round pick last year, if you know anything about him, he is god-awful at playing cornerback in the NFL. He's about 155 pounds, soaking wet. So without him out there, the Commanders are expected to slide in Mike Sanders still, the captain from last year's Michigan championship team, into that slot. We're going to get more run out of him. And he's a guy that I really wanted the Bengals to draft this year. I think he's going to be a really, really good player. And I think Emmanuel Forbes might lose that spot for good, potentially, based on how he plays. So I think the Commanders' defense is going to look much better than it did last week. Obviously, one of the worst defensive showings in the entire league going against that Buccaneers offense when Baker Mayfield just picked you apart. But 2 rushing touchdowns for Jaden Daniels. He's going to get that arm going. Everyone struggled in week 1. He didn't even look that bad. He had about the same amount of passing yards as Joe Burrow. So I think Jaden Daniels did exactly what I needed to see out of him to have confidence in this Commanders team. And this is a game I'm watching pretty closely because the Bengals are playing the Commanders next week. And if the Commanders can go and play the Giants and Jaden Daniels look really, really good and light it up, and they didn't get Terry involved at all last week, and maybe that offense starts to click a little bit. If the Bengals don't show big signs of improvements against the Chiefs, I'm going to be worried about that game a little bit more than I already was. But one last nugget on the Commanders I thought was a little bit interesting. I saw after week 1, talked about how they haven't used Terry much this year. I know it's just week 1, but Terry McLaurin, a bona fide number 1 in this league, and they aren't throwing him the ball as much, especially with a rookie quarterback. That was surprising. Terry McLaurin led the NFL in I forget what the verbiage was, but where you line up. He lined up in one spot more than anyone else in the entire NFL last week. He lined up split out wide to the left side 88% of the routes he ran. 88%. Lined up out wide on the left side.
That's crazy.
What do we talk about with all these other teams that win? You scheme open your number 1. You hunt matchups. You move them around. And Dan Quinn, I know he's not the offensive coordinator, but he's the new head coach. This falls on him. Washington needs to have a better scheme. Having your guy line up in the same spot 88% of the time when you move off of Jahan Dotson and he's really the only receiving threat you have, the only dominant receiving threat you have, to not have any level of creativity with Terry McLaurin is absolutely ridiculous. And hopefully that changes after week 3. For the Commanders after the Bengals are able to take care of business. But if they can get a little bit more free in that offense, have a little bit more trust in Jaden Daniels, I think they'll turn that around pretty quickly.
You went so much longer than I thought you'd go on that game that it's crazy to me. Crazy. But nonetheless, I love you for it. Seattle, I mean, that, by the way, you took 6 minutes off the clock on that one.
Sorry.
No, I don't care. Seattle at New England. By the way, I think New England's terrible. Nonetheless, I'm going to be betting on the Seattle Seahawks -3.5. I think they win the game. But There is a little thought in the back of my mind they start 2-0 just because of how down everybody is on them. I don't think the Patriots are better than the Seahawks in any facet of the game. The only concern is Kenneth Walker has not practiced yet this week, and if they're unable to run the football, I don't know if they're going to be able to beat the Patriots because the Patriots just play, let's just sit on the ball for as long as possible. I didn't think Geno Smith looked particularly good last week. Tyler Lockett, I think, was the savior. DK Metcalf wasn't involved at all. So I don't know. I think it'll be probably a close game, low-scoring game, like 17-14 type game. I think that the Seahawks win, but New England covers type of deal here. So, again, you like the backup running back for Seattle, though.
I do, yeah. Zach Charbonnet, he came from UCLA by way of Michigan. He's a very, very good player. I thought going into this season that he was going to cut into Kenneth Walker's usage quite a bit if Walker was healthy. I think they're going to be fine when it comes to scheme and running the ball against the Patriots. Obviously, the Bengals did an okay job, even though they just didn't run the ball much. Zach Moss had almost 5 yards per carry.
Yeah.
So that stuff is there against the Patriots. I think it's infuriating if you go back and watch the All-22 of the Bengals-Patriots game that they just didn't even for a second believe that we were handing the ball off.
Yeah.
They would leave the middle of the field wide open in clear run sets where we have the O lineman down in run stances and play action movement, and they don't bite whatsoever. It's ridiculous how predictable the Bengals offense has seemed against the Patriots, or maybe the Patriots defensive scheme's that good. Gerard Mayo was a hell of a linebacker in the NFL, and now he's a head coach. He's going to get that team ready to go. They're going to cover. They might win, but I'll say Seattle's going to win, but I'll take the Patriots to cover. They're just going to take so many possessions out of football games. They're going to make games so short this season that I think they're going to cover more often than not, maybe.
I agree. We only have a couple picks left, and Jacob, that spread, or the 14.5, it's going to be close. How many games we give out?
It is going to be close.
Chargers, Panthers. This is a tricky one because I know the gambling world is so heavy on the Chargers that you almost have to take the Panthers.
Do you have the stat?
Spread's mine. I don't have it off the top of my head.
I'll find it while you're talking.
Okay, it's -5. Chargers are favored on the road in Carolina. If you watched any of the Panthers game on Sunday, I feel very sorry for you because truly that was the worst performance I've seen in a very, very long time.
If you bet on the Panthers +4, you are an idiot. This guy bet on the Panthers.
Yeah, I was.
Oh, last week I mean.
Yeah, correct.
I had the Panthers.
I'm torn on this one. I'm going to be betting Carolina +5 because of how much I truly hate it. I don't think Bryce Young's a good quarterback. I'm not going to say it's all his fault because the situation he has in Carolina is terrible. But nonetheless, go around that roster, and it is truly terrible after terrible player with love and respect. And you're playing a Chargers team that's coming off momentum, and that just won a game by running the football. If the Chargers take the clock away from the Panthers, there's legitimately no chance. If the Chargers have a better shot at winning 3-0 than the Panthers winning any score at any point total.
Yeah, I think you're right. And after last week, I said I would never take the Panthers again. And then I saw this stat. Dogs of more than 4 points following a 35-plus point loss have gone 48-18-2 against the spread over the past 20 years. That's a 73% win percentage. And if you know anything about how my brain works, I don't need to hear anything else. That is a Panthers +5 max play.
Yep.
Max play. You give me a 20-year stat hitting at 75%, I couldn't be more in. I'm thrilled for this game. Bryce Young's going to turn it around.
He's going to turn it around?
He has one.
What's he turning around?
He has 1 or 2 games a year that he looks decent. Last year it was against C.J. Stroud. This year it's going to be in this game. I think the Panthers are definitely going to cover.
Going to turn it around.
Definitely going to cover.
Going to turn it around.
You
would feel so bad if the Chargers win this game by 40 and you were on the Panthers.
Yeah, and I'm gonna take the Panthers. Look, I can't stop myself from relapsing on Bryce Young. I watched Bryce Young up close and personal for 3 years at Alabama, 2020 through 2023. And he was one of the most impressive quarterbacks I've ever seen in my entire life. He's one of the most talented players I've ever seen, and that's practice and games, and it just hasn't translated to the NFL whatsoever, but man, I can't kick him. I think he's going to work at some point, at some level. I'm not saying he's going to be an MVP candidate or a Super Bowl contender, but I really still truly believe he can be a starter in this league.
All right. Each man has an opinion, and that was certainly yours. We'll do some rapid fire. We got 2 minutes here. We have Cleveland versus Jacksonville in Jacksonville. That spreads 3. And then you have the Raiders at Baltimore. That spreads 9. I'm going to go rapid fire here. Ravens win that game by 30. And then I'm going to take the Browns to beat Jacksonville. I don't think Jacksonville looked very good. Jacksonville is the definition of mediocrity. They'll never be good. They'll never be truly terrible. They'll just be right in the middle to bottom, and they'll just be bleh. I think the Browns win this game because I do think Bearcat alum Jerome Ford carries the way.
I like that. I'm taking the Jags and the Ravens there. I just think the Jags are going to be a fringe playoff team in the AFC, and I think the Browns are one of the worst teams in the entire conference. So just for that, taking the 3, I think at worst you're going to push there. The hook would change things, but at 3 even, I like the Jags. Baltimore -9, like you said, that number could be 3 times as big, and I'd still feel pretty good about taking them. The one thing I would say about Baltimore is I don't think anyone does well fantasy-wise other than Derrick Henry and Lamar. I don't think they're going to throw the ball at all. Raiders' run defense is terrible.
Final 2 here. Houston. Well, we already gave the Bengals. We both said Bengals cover, right?
That's right.
So final 2 here. Pittsburgh at Denver. That's the grossest game I've ever seen. That'll happen at 4:25.
It's one of my favorite bets of the whole weekend.
-2.5. Pittsburgh's favored. Are you taking Denver?
No.
You're taking Pittsburgh?
Yeah.
What's the final score? 6-2?
The final score. Do you remember that Thursday Night Football game that the Broncos played a few years back, I believe, against the Colts?
Yeah, you might have to help me out.
I don't believe a touchdown was scored.
Really?
I think it was 9-6 or 7.
Oh, I do remember this. That was the Russell Wilson.
It was the first season of Thursday Night Football.
Yes.
Russell Wilson
Yes.
on the Broncos. This is going to be that.
I think they scored a touchdown in overtime, didn't they? Or did they almost score one?
But incredibly low scoring, one of the worst games of all time, and I don't think this is going to be any different. I'm not going to watch a minute of it, but I'm certainly going to take the Steelers. Justin Fields starting again. His floor is just so high when it comes to fantasy production and just purely moving the ball downfield. If he doesn't turn the ball over, they're going to be fine. You just don't throw it at Patrick Surtain the whole game, and I think they're good to go. And Arthur Smith schemed around Jesse Bates last week, got him the win in Atlanta against a team I think is much better than Denver. I'm taking Pittsburgh -2.5.
I hate it. I'm disgusted by it. I'll take Pittsburgh, though, -2.5, with no analysis whatsoever. And finally, we have the Bears at Houston. Sunday night football. I've been waiting all night for Sunday night. 8:20. You have the Houston Texans at home against the Bears. 6.5-point spread are the Texans, and I am going to take the Texans to not win this game, but to destroy the Chicago Bears. I think it'll be a terrible performance from everybody all around in Chicago. A better performance than Caleb Williams had last week, but nonetheless still bad. I just think the Texans are better out of every facet. You going to get weird? I feel like you're going to get weird here.
Caleb Williams throws for over 300 yards.
Yeah, this is weird.
And covers the 6.5. C.J. Stroud played the Ravens in Week 1 last year. Put up 240 yards, obviously an impressive stat line, but certainly didn't look good. No touchdowns. Team lost to a good team, and obviously the Bears were able to pull it out last week. But in Week 2 last year, C.J. Stroud threw for over 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, put his name on the map as a top quarterback in the league, as the bona fide rookie of the year, as a stud right away. And I think that's what Caleb Williams is going to do this year. I think in this game, too, in a game everyone's watching against the best young quarterback in the league in C.J. Stroud, Caleb Williams is going to put his name right there in that conversation. I think Caleb's going to have a game of his life. He's going to play great. He's going to look like the prospect that a lot of us expected him to look like, and the Bears are going to cover the spread.
Okay, I like it. I mean, that's a weird pick to me, but nonetheless, we'll have I'm sure a discussion in our group chat Sunday night whether or not Caleb Williams is legit, because we have half the office who thinks he is and half the office who doesn't. But nonetheless, that's it. That's our show. We made it 6 segments for the radio. Everybody have a good Friday. Have a good weekend. Box lunch. We're going to come at you in a bit. We're going to send some stuff to the radio, and after that, we'll be right there with you. Everybody, thank you for tuning in. I'm going to try to do these chat power rankings right now. Hold on. So everybody, I'm going to fill some time. Jacob, what's your favorite color?
My favorite color is red.
Really?
Yeah, it's a tough decision between crimson and scarlet, but probably somewhere in the middle. I picked 2 red colleges to root for, and I went to a blue high school. I don't really even like the color blue, but
all right, we have our chat power rankings. I believe they're in the bar. So there you go. We have only a top 4 this week. A top 4, and I will hear no criticism about it.
Is there any like, I don't know, notable monument with 4 names that we could name this after?
The Mount Statue of Liberty.
I can't think of it either.
All right, that's it. Everybody have a good weekend. Radio folks,
You're
thank
not
you.
giving the rankings?
YouTube I just did it. They can see it.
Oh, I didn't see you put it at the bottom. I thought you were going to read them.
Chat power rankings. Number 1, AJ. Number 2, Mark. Number 3, Haro. Number 4, Molly. Those are your top 4. There will be no questions, and I will not apologize. Everybody have a great, great, great weekend. Enjoy watching some football. Enjoy the beautiful weather. And again, this has been a silly show.